Part 96. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 985. Ding 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 ding. The thumbthick iron chain was opened, and a turbid smell came out. The environment on the second floor was obviously much worse. In the dark cell, there were only a few oil lamps illuminating it. Master Ho, it's very dirty inside, otherwise we shouldn't go in. Song Changming whispered from the side. Su Tong thought that he was not really here to inspect the cell. He nodded when he saw this. It's okay not to enter, but I heard that Lord Kuazo comes to live here for a period of time every year. Yes, this cell has too much yin and resentment. Every year during the Ghost Festival, we just can't control it, so Lord Kuazo comes to live here for a day. Song Changming did not hide this. In that case, where does Mr. Kuazo live every time? Up above, there is a room specially prepared for Mr. Kuazo. Song Changming was very surprised and didn't know what the Shinwei Marquis was doing asking these questions. That's just right. I'm a little tired. Take me to have a rest. Hearing Su Tong's words, Song Changming was startled and said quickly, Master Ho, this is absolutely impossible. What's wrong? Can't I go in and take a rest? If you're hiding like this, there might be something shameful in that room that you're hiding in. When Su Tong spoke, he already took out Su last token in his hand. Song Changming's expression changed when he saw this, and he quickly explained, that room has not been occupied for a long time and is full of dust. If Lord Marquis wants to rest, we still have a few clean rooms in the prison. No, just lead the way, Master Song. Su Tong's tough attitude made Song Changming dare not argue anymore, so he could only bite the bullet and take Su Tong to an attic above the cell. Su Tong wiped his fingers on the door lock to make sure that the dust on it had been there for some time, then nodded and motioned to Song Changming to open the door. Buzz. After the door was gently pushed open, as Song Changming said, the room was full of dust. Master Marquis, look, how can anyone live in this place? Song Changming wanted to persuade Su Tong again, but Su Tong waved his sleeves and swept it gently. Suddenly a breeze blew up, and the next moment all the filth in the room was rolled into a gray ball no bigger than a baby's fist. Su Tong picked up the thing and put it in Song Changming's hand casually. I'm sorry to bother Master Song. I'm tired, so I won't give it to you. After saying that, Su Tong walked into the room, turned around and closed the door. Bang! Song Changming, who was caught off guard, was stunned. He stared blankly at the door in front of him. The expression on his face became uncontrollably distorted and he opened his mouth, just when he wanted to curse secretly. Buzz! The door of the room in front of him was suddenly opened. At this moment, Song Changming's expression didn't have time to change. For a moment, his facial features were twisted into a ball, his mouth was open, and his breath was stuck in his throat, neither up nor down. No, the veins on his forehead were all stretched. Su Tong blinked and looked at Song Changming, who had an extremely expressive expression. Is Mr. Song okay? Not dead. Song Changming almost choked to death with his own breath, but he still had to force out a smile for Su Tong. The discomfort was as if he had stifled a huge sneeze without letting it out, and the tears were in his eyelids. Spin. Oh, it's okay. I just told you, don't call me to eat tonight. Bang. After Su Tong finished speaking, he closed the door heavily again. This time, Song Changming stood in front of the door with a bitter look on his face, glared at the door fiercely, and then turned around and left dejectedly. This guy is really not a fuel-efficient guy. Su Tong stood behind the door and passed through the door with his spiritual eyes. He stared at Song Changming's leaving figure and muttered in his heart. Not only Song Changming, but also the guards, cell leaders, and even the handyman here are not simple. But he didn't come here to investigate the truth, and he didn't want to pay attention to it for the time being. After looking around the room to make sure that there were no secret cells, Su Tong sat on the bed, crossed his knees, and put his body. The pure yang energy was completely restrained. Without the suppression of this pure yang energy, the fierce and violent energy filled the entire Tianlao in an instant. Waves of low roars came from the empty cell again. Dingle bell. Dingle bell. The friction sound made by the iron rope sounded like someone walking around in the cell, but when you looked closely, you couldn't see a single ghost. The guards responsible for guarding the Sky Prison have become accustomed to this, and have even formed some kind of secret tacit understanding with the unexplainable beings in the cell. They walked this way, and those sneaky shadows walked the other way. The two walked in completely opposite directions, perfectly avoiding confrontation. After Su Tong calmed down his breath, he pointed his finger at his brow, and then his soul escaped from his body. Fortunately, I haven't taken the pure yang distracting pill yet, otherwise the soul would transform into the pure yang soul, and these evil ghosts would have disappeared long ago. Su Tong Yuan Shen escaped from the room, and with a pinch of his fingers, he summoned 2 divine thunder talismans and stuck them on the door. If you want to take the opportunity to sneak attack on your own body, these 2 divine thunder talismans are enough to kill the opponent. Then Su Tong's soul moved and quickly rushed into the prison. The surrounding guards only felt a dark shadow flashing in front of their eyes, but no one paid attention to it, because this kind of situation happens all the time here. Sir, what exactly is this Lord Xinwu trying to do? Song Changming led a group of people to inspect the prison as usual, and the prison chief beside him asked in a low voice. I didn't know. Song Changming's face looked very ugly. At this moment, he still felt like he was holding a tight breath in his chest that he could not exhale. He had already greeted the whole family of Marquis Xinwu in his heart. After saying that, he turned back and glared at the prison bosses. Don't care what he does. Please pay attention to me tonight. As long as the prison is not in chaos, it doesn't matter what he does. Several prison bosses said yes one after another, but before they could say a few more words, they suddenly heard a sharp roar coming from the Sky Prison. Everyone was startled and glanced in the direction. One of the prison guards frowned. Why are these wandering souls so dishonest today? No matter what they do, we just follow the route. Another cell leader disagreed. Anyway, as long as you follow the rules and follow the fixed route, nothing will go wrong. The rules in the prison today are strict. The patrol time, walking route, departure time, and end time are all fixed rules. The living go to the left, the dead go to the right, and those who transgress will die. These rules are all piled up one by one with human lives. Humans and ghosts are in the same prison, but there are 2 routes to take. No matter which party is wrong, they will pay a huge price. Keep walking. Song Changming didn't want to say more here, and urged everyone to move forward, but when he raised his head, his eyes suddenly widened, and he saw a black shadow in the distance rushing towards them like crazy. Be bold. Anyone who crosses the line will be killed. Seeing that the ghost figure did not follow a fixed route, Song Changming's face darkened and he pulled out the long knife in his hand. Several prison guards behind them immediately raised their bronze mirrors, Bagua diagrams, bells and other magic weapons. The group quickly formed a formation, and before the ghosts could rush up, they released a chilling aura and sent out a murderous aura. The ghost crashed to the ground. Then when the bronze mirror shined, the ghost couldn't move. Song Changming quickly stepped forward and killed the ghost with a knife. After the ghosts dispersed, Song Changming sheathed his long sword and frowned. I have some impression of this guy. I have seen him before. He is quite quiet. Why did he mess up the rules today? Hey, if you mess with the rules, you don't even have to be a ghost. No one was surprised by this. It wasn't the first time they encountered this kind of thing. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the sound of the collision of iron chains sounded in the cell. Ding 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 ding. Everyone's expressions changed and they suddenly became alert. Song Changming quickly pulled out his sword and squinted his eyes to look into the cage ahead. The sound of ghosts crying and howling in the dark cell became louder and louder, and the oil lamp hanging in the corridor began to swing unsteadily. How could this happen? What day is today? Song Changming became nervous and hurriedly asked the cell leader behind him. October 28th is not a big day. Several prison bosses looked at each other. At this moment, the oil lamp in front suddenly dimmed, and the entire cell suddenly became pitch black. Song Changming and others focused their attention on the corridor in front of them for a moment. They felt that the corridor was frighteningly dark today, and there was a rustling sound. Hwachiza. Seeing this, Song Changming hurriedly asked someone to take out the fire seal, blew lightly for 2 breaths, and then threw it forward. The flames flashed in the air, illuminating the surrounding cells. But what caught their eyes were countless dark shadows, rushing towards them like crazy. Now Song Changming and others were dumbfounded, thinking, did they go in the opposite direction today? Sir, run quickly. Fortunately, the prison guard behind him was quite excited. When he saw this, he quickly pulled Song Changming and ran back. Several prison guards had nimble feet and ran very fast, but Song Changming was unlucky. He was a lame. He ran forward with one leg shallow and deep, and fell to the ground after running a few times. Abeo, Xiao Song, save me. Song Changming screamed for them to come back, but the prison bosses just ran out without looking back. At this critical moment, who can save whom? Just wish yourself good luck. Seeing these subordinates running away one by one, Song Changming's face turned pale. When he looked back, he saw the dark shadow rushing toward him. His face suddenly turned pale. He simply turned over and threw himself on the ground, curling up in a ball. He just wanted to leave a whole body for himself. Soon after, Song Changming felt his body sink suddenly, and a chill almost swallowed him up. Song Changming thought that he was certain to die, but he soon discovered that these evil spirits that eat people without spitting out bones actually ignored him and flew directly past him. Huh! Song Changming was confused. Just when he was at a loss, he suddenly heard a familiar voice. Don't run. I'm here to save you guys. Why are you running? Come in here. Song Changming was stunned for a few seconds. This voice was too familiar. Wasn't it the voice of Marquis Shinwuo? But why does it sound like I'm picking out crabs from a market vendor? With doubts, Song Changming slowly raised his head and finally discovered the culprit. Su Tong was seen chasing after these ghosts unhurriedly. Wherever he passed, the void around him twisted, and an upside-down world emerged. At that moment, a large number of ghosts had no time to escape and were directly sucked into it. Su Tong himself was standing in the middle, picking and kicking some smelly fish and rotten shrimps away. Those who didn't know better thought he was visiting the vegetable market. It has to be said that the number of ghosts in the prison today is simply ridiculous, and the quality is even rarer. Except for the occasional wandering soul with missing arms and legs that looked sickly, the quality of the other wandering souls was quite good. Soon the space between reality and reality was filled with a large number of ghosts. Rumble. I saw the nightmare cavalry starting to weave in and out, hitting these ghosts with nightmare impacts from time to time. Under the impact of the power of the nightmare, these ghosts seemed to be stimulated and crazily devoured other ghosts around them in order to protect themselves. Soon, those wandering souls with weak strength were devoured, and some evil ghosts became stronger and stronger. At this time, Su Tong noticed that several evil spirits among them had improved very quickly. Su Tong paid attention and found that although they were ghosts, they were very powerful in fighting. They not only knew martial arts, but also knew how to form a team. Then I thought about it, the person who could die in this prison was extraordinary. I remember that Song Changming said before that more than 300 bandits were originally imprisoned here. Seeing how skillfully these people gathered together to devour evil spirits, they could not be the group of bandits that Song Changming mentioned. It makes sense if you think about it this way. Since you can eat, then eat more. When Su Tong saw this, he stopped being picky. With a movement of his soul, the reality behind him completely spread out, almost covering the entire cell. At this moment, all the evil ghosts on the first floor of the prison were instantly drawn into the gap between reality and reality without distinction. Fortunately, when Su Tong first entered Taoism, the reality and reality were based on the style of the ghost market, and the space was huge, otherwise there would really be no room for so many evil ghosts. It's you. Seeing Su Tong devouring the evil spirits in the prison like this, Song Changming's eyes widened and he roared angrily, "You are robbing the prison." Su Tong glanced at Song Changming, frowned, grabbed Song Changming and threw them directly into his own reality. "Yang Hong, how dare you?" Song Changming did not expect that Su Tong would be so bold. He was caught off guard and fell into the gap between reality and reality. Before he could draw his sword to resist the out-of-control evil spirits, he rushed towards Song Changming like crazy. But in just a short moment, Song Changming was chewed up until not even the bones and dregs were left. Su Lai wanted him to live a long life, but he chose to let him kneel down at an early age. Now that he had encountered it, he could only blame him for his bad luck. Su Tong's approach was very bold. After all, he was an official guarding the Tian Lao. If he was killed like this, even Su Lai might not be able to save him if word spread. But now that all the guards and prison chiefs have run away, Mr. Song will naturally he died in the line of duty, and no one can blame him. Huh. At this time, Su Tong suddenly noticed that after Song Changming died, his soul was not eaten by the evil ghosts. Instead, his body was enveloped in a bloody red light. Under the red light, Song Changming's body suddenly changed. It was extremely huge, with its big hands raised high, it actually wanted to tear a hole between its reality and rush out. It turns out to be a ghost cultivator. When Su Tong saw this, he could see the origin of Song Changming's change at a glance, and he suddenly understood in his heart. No wonder they are inseparable from this prison and are not affected by the evil spirit of the prison. It turns out that's the reason. Although I don't know how Su Lai did it, it seems at this moment that whether it is the prison chief, the guards, or even Song Changming himself, they are no longer living people, but corpses. To be precise, they are just parasitic in the body, and they are already dead. Maybe even they themselves don't know this. Song Changming, Song Huiming, what a good name. If you are given another 10 years, you may really be able to use this method to become a ghost and immortal. By then, you only need to fight, and you can travel in and out of the human world. Song Changming raised his head and glared at Su Tong. "Yang Hong, you ruined Lord Kuazu's plan, you will die a good death." Snort. Su Tong snorted coldly, "You'd better seek happiness for yourself. Now that you're here, don't even think about going out again." After that, white hair grew on Su Tong's forehead, and the Vajra supernatural power was activated. The soul came down like a Buddha, raised his hand and slapped Song Changming with a Vajra seal. Great Vajra seal. Although there is no physical body, Su Tong's soul has been polished by the Nirvana Sutra and has begun to have divinity. When he patted it with his big hand, the Buddha's light suddenly appeared. When Song Changming was alive, although he was a cripple, his cultivation seemed to be mediocre and not even a great master. But he is actually practicing the ghost way. For many years, he has used the evil spirit of Tian Lao to practice. His strength has been infinitely close to that of ghost immortals. If he is given another 10 years without the help of a physical body, he may not be his opponent. "I will fight with you." Song Changming knew that this was a critical moment of life and death. If he couldn't rush out, he would probably end up in a state of despair. Immediately, Song Changming chanted a spell and turned into a giant evil spirit with 3 heads and 6 arms. When the 6 arms were waved, a sea of blood was set off around him. In an instant, those ghosts and evil spirits were in bad luck and were swallowed up by the sea of blood and struggled. After a few strokes, the soul was scattered and transformed into a sea of blood. You wanna die? Seeing that Song Changming had dispersed most of the ghosts that he had managed to capture, Su Tong became furious and struck down with a palm, breaking both of Song Changming's arms with the power of Vajra. At the same time, the left hand is Sumeru seal and the right hand is Great Compassion seal. The two seals were issued at the same time, causing Song Changming's body to shrink rapidly. The Great Compassion seal was shot, and the huge Buddha's light was like a small mountain, hitting Song Changming's head. Ah! Seeing the sky-covering mountain falling head-on, Song Changming's expression became extremely ferocious, and he opened his forearms, trying to lift the golden mountain up. A classic picture, but not a classic ending. The moment Jinshan fell, Song Changming's arm was smashed into pieces. The huge force almost shattered his soul. Then Su Tong flicked his fingers and dropped two dragon-beaming talismans. He immediately wrapped it tightly from head to toe and threw it towards the corner, intending to throw it into the immortal furnace to refine elixirs after returning. After all, although ghosts and immortals, he is a low-ranking person, but he is not an immortal at all. After dealing with Song Changming, Su Tong took a look and saw that most of the evil ghosts he had just brought in had been dispersed by 1/3 by Song Changming. He felt distressed for a while, but fortunately, this was only one level, so it was still there is a layer underneath. Su Tong immediately escaped into the second floor of the dungeon. After collecting all the ghosts in the second floor between reality and reality, he turned his eyes and looked at the third floor of the dungeon. According to what Song Changming said before, there were only 3 people on the third floor of the prison. But he didn't say who these 3 people were. He simply went there himself to see what the origins of these 3 people were, and how they were able to be imprisoned in the third floor of the sky prison. I saw his spirit passing through the third floor of the heavenly prison. I saw that the cell was not big, only about 30 square meters in size. 3 people were hung in the air in the cell, their eyes were tightly covered by leather sheaths, and their bodies were covered by 4 long sticks. The spear penetrated and was stuck there like a hedgehog. These 3 people had been imprisoned here for who knows how long. The spears inserted into their bodies had become one with their flesh and blood. Su Tong originally wanted to get closer, but he felt that there was an invisible force constricting the space around him. If he looked carefully, he could see various strange talismans densely carved on the walls. These talismans should be used to suppress the 3 souls and prevent them from escaping by leaving their bodies. I don't know who they are, but they were tortured by Su Lai in this way. Just when Su Tong was planning to leave first and wait for an opportunity tomorrow to ask other cell leaders about the identities of these 3 people. Ding! The iron rope trembled slightly, and then the white-haired old man among the 3 suddenly raised his head. "Fellow Taoist, please don't leave." Su Tong was a little surprised when he heard this. His soul was out of body, not his physical body. This old man's soul had been suppressed by the talisman here for so long, but he was still aware of himself. "Can you see me?" "No, but I can feel you." "Fellow Taoist, you are so powerful that you are able to escape into this place with the power of your soul. I am afraid you are already a godlike figure on land. I beg you, fellow Taoist, for a merciless request." Su Tong was shocked. This old man could even guess his own cultivation level. This shows that his strength may not be lower than his own. Thinking of this, Su Tong said, "Tell me, and I will consider whether I can help you." "Thank you, fellow Taoist, Taoist Xian Tong. These 2 people are named Jia Xian and Xiang Ping. 3 brothers and I have been trapped here by Su Lai for 20 years. We have already run out of oil and lamps. We know that our fate is soon. I just ask fellow Taoist to go to a Daowen in Suzhou East Lane. There is a family named Sun in the Daowen. If fellow Taoist has the opportunity to pass by Suzhou Prefecture, please help to take care of him." Su Tong originally thought that Xian Tong would ask him to save them, but he didn't expect that the request mentioned was so simple. "Don't you ask me to help you take revenge." The old Taoist laughed hoarsely after hearing this. "For 20 years, I have wanted to cut Su Lai into thousands of pieces day and night, but now I have given up this idea. The only thing I can't worry about is the family member I left behind. When fellow Taoists go, you only need to tell them that Xian Tong is dead, and they will have something to give to fellow Taoists as reward." After the old man finished speaking, Su Tong also received a prompt from the prop book. Side Mission 4, Report Safety. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 986. 20 years of resentment and blood-sweat hatred, but when he was about to die, what he cared about most was not Su Lai, but leaving an explanation to his family. After Su Tong nodded to indicate that he had taken note of it, he suddenly remembered something. "May I ask if the chief has anything to do with the people in the prison above?" The old Taoist priest sneered when he heard this. "I am not that lucky. These people have a close relationship with Su Lai for 8 years and are Su Lai's brothers in life and death." The old Taoist Xian Tong told Su Tong a story from the past. 36 years ago, Xian Kingdom was at its peak. At the junction of Suanqiu and Tianqian, in a place called Daliang Mountain, a group of bandits were entrenched. This group of bandits is extraordinary in strength, and they are all top-notch masters in the world. There are even some elite disciples from various sects. These people gathered because of their interests, worshipped each other, exchanged martial arts, and even taught each other their unique skills. Later, they intercepted a military salary from Xianguo and began to recruit troops. But in the blink of an eye, in 3 years, it has become a climate. It is a coincidence that in the past 3 years, Xian was experiencing turmoil in the country, barbarians outside, the powerful ministers in the court were fighting against each other, and the emperor was old and fatuous, so no one paid attention to this bandit for a while. By the time Xianguo discovered that there was actually a group of 30,000 bandits in the Daliang Mountains, this group of bandits was already monopolizing one side and becoming very powerful. The leader of the thieves is called Zhao Zhen, and there are 307 brothers below him, all of whom are powerful. Xianguo sent troops several times to encircle and suppress him, but he was beaten to pieces. They even forced Xianguo to order a recruitment order and spent countless gold and silver treasures before high-ranking officials and generous salaries recruited this bandit as their subordinate. As a result, this bandit became stronger and stronger with the blessing of Xianguo's national power. But when Zhao Zhen found out that the king of Xian state intended to divide his forces, he became alarmed. After he went out to fight again, he took an army of 70,000 and turned around and defected to Tianqian. This wave of operations was simply outstanding. Tianqian's national power was declining at that time and was on the decline. As a result, after Zhao Zhen's actions, the entire national destiny has undergone tremendous changes. Zhao Zhen was even more reused by Tianqian, and he began to conquer all over the country for Tianqian. Even in his glory days, he once wiped out the 4 southern countries and unified the south. However, Zhao Zhen disappeared and was replaced by Mr. Qiaozu, whose pseudonym was Su Lai. As for the brothers who followed Su Lai to conquer the world, they died and fled, and in the end most of them stayed in this prison. This is why Su Lai comes here to sit here for a day every year, just to suppress the ghosts of his brothers, prevent them from escaping and causing trouble, and expose this dark history of his. I see. Su Tong suddenly realized that Su Lai was really ruthless and could even kill his own dead brother. No wonder he came here to suppress him in person every year. But after this year, I'm afraid there won't be any need. These ghosts have been completely absorbed by me between reality and reality. When I take the time to pick and choose, they will be enough to train a cavalry for myself. Taoist master, take care and say goodbye. For these 3 people, Su Tong had no idea of helping them. Firstly, he didn't know how good or bad the three of them were. Secondly, he still had to rely on the big tree of Tiangan to suck blood. If he really helped, the three of them were convicted of prison robbery. As long as the number of people in the cell is correct, Su Lai can do nothing even if he knows that he has taken away the souls of his good brothers. After all, dynastic law can only control the living, but not the dead. If we want to include the souls of the dead among the people in the heavenly prison, I am afraid that even the civil and military officials in the court will not agree to it. After Su Tongyuan Shen returned to his physical body, he heard a loud noise outside the door. It was obvious that the turmoil in the dungeon had caused the guards of Tianlao to start preparing to suppress it in full swing. But it is estimated that when they enter the sky prison, they will find that all the evil ghosts who caused trouble in the sky prison have been taken away by themselves. Of course, this does not change the environment of Tianlao. Apart from these innocent ghosts, the really scary thing about this prison is the evil spirit that has accumulated here over the years. If I take away all the ghosts that have been wronged for more than 10 years, it won't be long before they will still attract wandering ghosts from other places. For these wandering ghosts who are stranded in the underworld and refuse to go down, this is a natural holy land for cultivation. If it weren't for Song Changming and these guards, this place would have become the capital of Feng in the Yang dynasty, and a place where strangers were not allowed to enter. Su Tong ignored the movement outside, lay on the bed, called out the prop book, and took a look at the treasure list sent by Chang Wugu. You don't know this by looking at it, but you are shocked when you look at it. There are really a lot of treasures. Among them are many martial arts secrets and strange techniques. These secrets are not basic prop cards, but real martial arts secrets. They can be converted into prop cards just like the glazed stupa in your hand, and you can practice. Gu Zibai fell in love with a book called Exiled Immortal Tempering. This skill is an advanced version of the martial arts practice. The practitioner can open up his or her own acupoints, and after practicing to a great extent, the void will be shattered and the physical body will soar. There are also various swords and magic weapons, all of which are the most precious treasures in the world. Especially those rare elixirs. Just looking at the medicinal properties makes people salivate. Su Tong's eyebrows are beating, and the voice of the elixir is shouting crazily in his mind, make elixirs, make them all into elixirs. According to Chang Wugu, these things were all collected by Xiaolishan with great pains over the years, and even some of the treasures were the most valuable treasures of a sect, which Xiaolishan directly destroyed the sect and forcibly took away. Xiaolishan gave all these treasures to Yeliki, not only to increase his cultivation, but also to win over people's hearts and cultivate his own confidence. My biological uncle is older, and even my biological father may not be able to do this. Su Tong was envious of having such a good uncle. In contrast, as Su Lai's biological son, Su Fan was forced by Su Lai to kill his stepmother when he was young, so that he could keep his status as the heir apparent. This disparity is so huge that it is really embarrassing. Gu Zibai and Gao Zhou had already begun discussing how to divide these treasures in the team channel. Chang Wugu's permissions were changed by Su Tong and he could only speak one sentence for an hour, which made Gu Zibai and Gao Zhou blush with anxiety. Seeing this, Su Tong told Chang Wuhan to transfer all the drugs to the team warehouse, and casually changed Chang Wuhan's chat permissions. Chang Wuhan, who was able to speak freely, immediately started to complain about Su Tong like crazy. However, the matter was handled very quickly. The two big boxes were soon transferred into the team warehouse, and Gu Zibai finally got what he wanted. I got the martial arts classics I wanted. There are still a lot of treasures here, but the rest are too eye-catching. It's not convenient for me to take them now. I will give them to you after a while. Chang Wuhan said in the team channel. Su Tong said that the two large boxes of elixirs were enough, and asked him to stabilize his footing on the northern barbarian side first. When spring comes next year, they will go on a mission to the northern barbarians, and the help of Chang Wugu, a virtuous wife, is indispensable. As for the talismans that Chang Wogu needed, Su Tong drew 2 of them and put them in the team warehouse for Chang Wogu to prepare for emergencies. "Boss, we are going to Linen Mansion tomorrow." At this time, Li Bo from the team channel suddenly interrupted. This guy usually didn't speak and his presence was so low that Su Tong almost forgot about this guy. Li Bo followed Wu Ji and became a confidant. It seemed that he also triggered 2 small side tasks. The tasks were not difficult for him. After all, this guy had the blessing of a complete set of natural prop cards. Even if he was not a certified player, he could protect himself. The ability is more than enough, so there are no dangers along the way. "Okay, I'll wait for you at the city gate." After agreeing on a time with Li Bo, Su Tong waited for the calm outside, lay down on the wooden bed and slept for a while, and left the prison directly at the 4th watch the next day. As for how to deal with the chaos in Tianlao in the end, well, it's none of my business. Shortly after Su Tong left, Su Lai got the news and jumped straight to the Tianlao. When he opened the door of the Tianlao, Su Lai's face turned dark in an instant. All the innocent ghosts accumulated in the huge prison for more than 10 years were gone. What made him even more angry was that Song Changming, whom he had cultivated so painstakingly, disappeared without a trace. Song Changming was almost close to a ghost immortal. Even if his physical body couldn't suppress him, when his physical body was broken, it would be easy to suppress Tianlao. How could he be killed by a powerful ghost? So the answer is already self-evident. When he learned that Yang Hong had actually entered the prison with his own warrant, Su Lai was so angry that his teeth itched with hatred and he cursed, "This traitor." Then he quickly walked into the 3rd floor of the Tianlao. After pushing open the door on the 3rd floor of Tianyao and seeing that the 3 people were still there and that no problems had arisen, Su Laiake breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Although Yang Hong had ruined a good thing, fortunately, these 3 people still here. As long as the evil spirit of Tianlao still exists, as for the ghost, he can still think of another way. "Su Lai, you're scared." Just when Su Lai was thinking about how to replenish the ghosts in the sky prison, the Xian Dao man who was hanging in the air slowly raised his head and let out a hoarse laugh. Su Lai snorted coldly when he heard this, afraid. "I haven't known how to write this character since I was born." "Su Lai, you are going to do something against the will of heaven. I would like to advise you to stop at the cliff." The words of Master Xian Dao were serious and sincere, but they were full of sarcasm. Su Lai curled his lips and said, "I won't kill you, I just want you to watch with your eyes wide open and see how I change the world in your mouth." After that, Su Lai turned around and left the Tianlao. As soon as he walked out of the gate of the Tianlao, the Su family's housekeeper was already driving and waiting outside the door. When he saw Su Lai walking out, he hurriedly said, "Master, the prince is determined. If you want to go against the master, why don't you imprison him first to prevent changes?" After the housekeeper finished speaking, he found that Su Lai didn't respond to him, so he looked up, and his heart suddenly pounded. He saw Su Lai staring at him, making him feel hairy all over. Fortunately, Su Lai's expression returned to normal after a while and he waved his hand. "Forget it, let this beast run around for a few more days. After Lu Ji gives birth, I will discipline him properly." Saying that, Su Lai got into the carriage. "I'm afraid I might be really angry this time. It's better to be careful with what you say these days." The butler secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although there was no murderous intention just now, the cold light flashed in the master's eyes still made the butler feel like he was out of his mind. However, he didn't think much about it and just thought it was the prince who provoked him this time. The master was so angry that he just took it out on himself. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 987. Fourth Watch. Many businessmen's convoys have gathered outside the city gate of Linen Mansion and are waiting in line. At this time, it was only around 3 in the morning. Similar to reality, trucks that generally supply vegetable supplies to cities also start entering the warehouse at this point. The only difference is that these merchants' convoys often have to wait until the fifth watch before they can start entering the city. But today, as early as the third watch of the day, the city gate had been opened, and all the caravans had to give way to both sides. They all looked into the distance, as if waiting for someone to enter the city. Shui Wu will be back today. Absolutely. Otherwise, who would be waiting for such a big movement? Okay, we're lucky this time. We can see Marshal Wu, even if it's just a carriage, it's worth it. Everyone said to each other one by one. It can be seen how high Wu Ji's reputation is in the hearts of many people. In fact, the common people don't care who becomes the emperor. But it would be different if they defeated the northern barbarians. Those barbarians treated the Han people like two-legged lambs. Once they fell into the hands of these barbarians, life would be worse than death. When Xiankun was destroyed, the city was massacred for 3 days, and blood flowed like a river. The ancestral tombs of Emperor Suankyo were dug up by these barbarians. Not only did they plunder all the burial objects, but they also took out the heads of Emperor Suankyo's ancestors and made them into wine bottles. What's more, after so many years, Tiangan has not been able to get an advantage from the northern barbarians. Now that he finally let out a fierce breath and defeated 100,000 elites of the northern barbarians, whoever has a little bit of blood in his heart can help but applaud him. Time passed by minute by minute. In the blink of an eye, the sun in the distance began to rise slightly, and it was already past the fifth watch, but none of the merchants outside the city entered the city. If Marshal Wu doesn't enter the city, whoever dares to enter won't be afraid of having his spine pierced. It's coming. It's coming. Marshal Wu is back. A little beggar ran and shouted in the distance. Everyone was suddenly excited and immediately raised their heads and looked up. Sure enough, on the road in the distance, a group of people were slowly approaching here. On the huge handsome flag, there was clearly written Wu character. Back, back. At this time, everyone burst into tears of joy and shouted Wu Shui triumphs in unison. The sound became louder and louder, and the entire Linen Mansion could hear it. Hearing the cheers outside, Wu Ji sat in the carriage with a very complicated mood. Returning triumphantly, these 4 words are what generals of all ages have wished for. But he and Xiao Qi have been fighting for so many years. Although they have won and lost, they dare not say it is a triumph. Now I finally hear this belated celebration, but I am already in my twilight years. But at the same time, he also felt lucky. Some people achieve great success at a young age, but it is only a fleeting brilliance. Although he is a late life achievement, he has already retired and his life is complete. There is no need to worry about the success of the master, and there is no need to make calculations for the sake of profit. Thinking about his life, Wu Ji would like to say that his regret was that Xiao Qi died too hastily. He wished that his old friend could return to heaven. Even if he sacrificed all his military exploits, he would definitely protect him. Just to be able to, it would be nice to compete with this old friend on the chessboard for a few more years. At this time, the shouts outside suddenly stopped. Wu Jie, who was sitting on the shaft of the car driving for his father, changed his expression and quickly opened the car curtain. "Father, Marquis Xinwu is here to pick you up." Wu Ji looked at the shocked expression on his son's face and looked slightly unhappy. He thought to himself that one of the unsatisfactory aspects of his life was this son. Although Xinwu Hao had a rich battle and outstanding military exploits, he was still his subordinate. He came to pick up his commander, so that he could enter the palace to face the saint together, so what's the big deal? Just when Wu Ji wanted to reprimand Wu Jie, Wu Ji almost bit his tongue when he heard Wu Jie's next words. "Dad, He is holding Lu Yanfang's head in his hand. Hiss. What did you say? Wu Ji took a breath of air, his head was buzzing, his heart was in a state of turmoil, and he had mixed feelings. Lu Yanfang, this name is undoubtedly a scar in the hearts of the soldiers of the three armies, and it is a shame that I don't want to mention. However, Yang Hong actually brought this man's head with him when he returned. This was not only a great comfort to his own reputation, but also to the hearts of the soldiers of the three armies. Wu Ji immediately ignored Wu Zhe and hurriedly got out of the car to take a look. Sure enough, he saw Su Tong standing in front of the city gate, holding a human head in his hands and standing there quietly. Looking at the bloody head, Wu Ji's eyes were already moist. Standing on the shaft of the car, raising and lowering his hands, not knowing what to do, the commander-in-chief of the three armies, the god of war of heaven, could no longer control his emotions. He knew that no matter how famous he was and how many achievements he had made, facing a despicable person like Lu Yanfang was like a lump in his throat and it was hard to swallow. He might be able to sacrifice his military exploits to exchange for Xiao Kai's life, but he could not exchange his military exploits for Lu Yanfang's life. Because Lu Yanfang was the person protected by his mentor, if he touches Lu Yanfang himself, he would be breaking his mentor's name and betraying his trust. But now, what he didn't dare to do was done by Yang Hong. This bloody head was an elixir, allowing him to finally give them an answer when he faced those fallen soldiers in the future. Thinking of this, Wu Ji ran forward quickly. The old man who was already 70 years old was walking as fast as flying. Without waiting for Wu Ji to approach, Su Tong held the head high with both hands and knelt forward on one knee as if pushing a golden mountain toppling a jade pillar. The last General Yang Hong paid homage to Wu Ji. The deserter Lu Yanfang's head is here. The injustice of 30,000 soldiers is today it can be revealed. Su Tong's voice was like a bell, filling the sky with shock, and seemed to have soul-penetrating power rippling over the entire linen mansion, shocking everyone's heart. Wu Ji looked at the head and burst into tears for a moment. He hugged Su Tong's arm with both hands and knelt down heavily. Marquis Wu has great righteousness. The 30,000 forward soldiers of this generation have thanked me. Outside the city gate, the two generals knelt down and worshipped each other. The old man and the young man hugged each other and cried. This scene shocked everyone's hearts. At this moment a shout sounded. God bless you, may your martial arts prosper forever. As soon as these words came out, it was like a spark falling into the gasoline, instantly igniting a raging flame. God bless you, may your martial arts prosper forever. The voices of everyone shouting in unison spread completely, shaking the white clouds in the sky and scattering them. Whether it was the common people waiting outside the city, the talented people and beauties in Linen Mansion, or even many noble manors and private houses. All kinds of people heard it clearly. At this moment, on the high wall of the imperial city, a young man in his early 30s was looking in the direction of Linen Gate. His sharp eyes seemed to see a heart-shaking scene from dozens of miles away. After a moment, he couldn't help but take a deep breath and said, "Okay, what a great saying, the military fortune will be prosperous forever, the old and the new will alternate, my destiny is prosperous and the country's fortune will be prosperous." As soon as these words were spoken, all the palace maids and eunuchs behind him knelt down on the ground. The leading eunuch quickly complimented, Your Majesty, my country is blessed with a prosperous destiny. Pass the decree, Suwaja and Marquis Shinwi ride into the palace. All military generals can go to the palace with their swords and tell them that I am waiting for them in the Daking Palace. According to the order. The eunuch hurriedly issued the decree, sighing in his heart that this honor was so great. He rode into the palace on horseback and brought a sword to the palace. Only Lord Kuazu was treated like this. The decree was quickly delivered to Su Tong, Wu Ji, and others. The eunuch who came to read out the imperial edict specially brought 2 horses, this is specially given by the emperor to the commander-in-chief and Wu Hao. Please follow me into the palace quickly. The emperor is already waiting for you two in Daking Hall. God bless you, may your martial arts prosper forever. In the back house of Kiwazu Mansion, Lu Ji was sitting on a chair, crying very sadly. She didn't know until yesterday that her brother Lu Yanfang was killed. She went to find her master, but he happened to be away. Now she was sitting on a chair with her belly bulging out, crying more and more sadly. At this time, Lu Ji's ears moved and she heard shouts outside. Immediately he called a servant and asked, "What's the noise outside? What happened?" As soon as these words came out, all the servants looked at each other, but no one dared to say anything. "You are a bunch of trash. I will feed you whatever you want. If you don't say anything, I will beat you to death with sticks." Lu Ji's eyes were red, and her aura was as vicious as a she-wolf biting an antelope. Now the servants no longer dared to hide it. When they mentioned that Yang Hong had offered Lu Yanfang's head at Linen Gate, Lu Ji was stunned for a moment, glaring at the sky outside. "Yang Hong! Yang Hong! We, the Lu family, are at odds with you." A scream made Lu Ji feel dizzy. Fortunately, the servants around her had already been on guard against her emotional discomfort and hurriedly supported her. Seeing that Lu Ji had passed out, her face suddenly changed, and she immediately called the imperial doctor in a hurry. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 988. Buzz. The Vermilion Palace door slowly opened, and before Su Tong and others could move forward, honor guards on both sides poured out of the palace door. The imperial city of Dakian is not large. It extends from Taiobu Bay to the south, Wansong Ridge to the north, the mountainside to the west, and the southern section of Zhonghe River to the east. It is about 1,400 meters long from east to west and about 700 meters from south to south, covering an area of 1 kilometer. Compared with the grand scale of the Forbidden City of 720,000 square meters, it seems a bit stingy, not to mention that in terms of decoration, it is very different from the Ziwei Palace of Empress Zhou in Luoyang. However, even this small imperial city should not be underestimated. Before Su Tong stepped into the palace gate, he felt that his aura had begun to be suppressed by an unknown force. In the Forbidden Palace of the imperial city, there are people who are suppressed by the emperor's luck. Even if it is me, after entering the palace gate, my strength is temporarily reduced to the earthly immortal, and I fall into the realm of Tao. The deeper inside, the stronger this sense of oppression becomes. However, my luck has been greatly improved. When I looked up, I saw that the Yin Hu above my head, entrenched in my luck, had grown 2 or 3 times larger. This improvement in luck is naturally inseparable from the operation of showing leadership just now in front of Linen Gate, and it is also due to the 4 words Wu Yun Yang Chang. No one really thinks that "God bless you, may your military fortune be prosperous." These 8 words were shouted out by someone on a whim. When he came out of Tianyao, Su Tong began to think about how Song Changming could use the word longevity to manipulate others' luck and lifespan in order to nourish himself. Why can't I do this myself? So after a little thought, I asked Dia to be possessed and shout these 8 words at the critical moment. Don't underestimate these 8 words. God bless you, and your martial arts will be prosperous. The focus of these 8 characters is on the last 4 characters. Don't forget that you are Shin Wu Hao. This character can refer to Dakian's military force, or it can be used alone, or it can refer to yourself. The common people wouldn't tell the difference so clearly, but I made a show in front of Linen Gate and gained enough attention, so when I shouted out, I would unconsciously think about myself, and the meaning of shouting out in this way also changed. Even if only 2 or 3 of the 10 people think this way, the huge number is enough to give them the benefits of winning a wave of battles. And the result was just as expected. Just as he thought, his luck kept rising from Linen Mansion to this palace. At this moment, Yin Hu has the appearance of winding up a mountain. As the saying goes, Yin who is circling the mountain, and hundreds of beasts are respected. Once you have reached this point, your luck has become your climate and you are no longer subject to the constraints of time. Su Tong was thinking about it. At this time, Wu Ji on the side saw that he was silent and thought Su Tong was not used to it, so he spoke. This is the palace's important place. Just get used to it, Marquis Wu. It's okay, I just don't know what suppressant is so overbearing. Su Tong looked around, wanting to see what this suppressive thing was. Wu Ji sighed after hearing this and explained to Su Tong, in this forbidden area of the imperial city, there is a stone tablet, which is the forbidden martial arts tablet left by Emperor Taizong. When Emperor Taizong founded the country was in ruins and was in turmoil. He was worried that the generals would support their troops and respect themselves, so he erected this monument in front of all the soldiers. In the name of the emperor, he sealed the monument to express peace in the world. It is forbidden to use weapons. After this incident, a group of generals surrendered their military power on the spot. From then on, the stone monument here became a palace monument and was respected by scholar bureaucrats and other Confucian literati. Military culture was banned and the world was peaceful. It is precisely for this reason that this forbidden area of the palace is the world of scholars. Gods and gods are not allowed to enter without permission, and we warriors are no different from those pawns. When Wu Ji said the last words, he was inevitably a bit resentful. In these troubled times, it was not an exception in history books to criticize Confucianism and harm the country. In his opinion, although this stone tablet suppressed the luck of heavenly stem, it also broke the blood of the generals and was a humiliation to the generals. As a result, Tianqian was frequently disturbed by the northern barbarians during the 100 years since its founding. If it weren't for his mentor's powerful force, Tianqian would have been trampled by the northern barbarians' cavalry just like Xiankun. However, Rao was a mentor who was closely related to the fate of the country. In the end, he had to enter the court as the pillar of the country. This shows how much the ancestral calendar was rejected by civil servants. So this is a. Su Tong had a look of sudden realization on his face, but Xiao Jiju began to stir in his heart. If he took such a cowhide stone tablet back and threw it out at the critical moment, wouldn't it be a big killer? Thinking of this, Su Tong pretended to be curious and said, I wonder where this forbidden martial monument is. It also gives me a chance to see it. On the side, Wu Ji seemed to see through Su Tong's little thoughts and pointed to the left side of the palace gate. Not far over there, there is a small temple, which enshrines the forbidden martial monument, but I advise Marquis Wu not to think too much about it. This stone tablet is carved from Taishan stone, and has a trace of the Taishan mansion's divinity. Even if Su Lai comes in person, it cannot shake it at all. Ah, ha ha ha, that's it, I just want to see it. Su Tong laughed, and his mind became active. I didn't expect that this stone is related to Fu Jun. Well, I just happen to have Fu Jun's seal in my hand, so maybe there is no chance. Boss, what kind of reward do you think this emperor can give us? Li Bo followed behind and asked in a low voice through the team channel. Su Tong rolled his eyes at him and said half-jokingly, I don't know, I might reward you with a big sword. No, forget about the big sword, my waist hurts recently. When Su Tong mentioned the big sword, Li Bo thought of the braised noodles in his hometown, and immediately felt that his big waist was beginning to hurt. While the two were talking, everyone had already arrived outside the palace gate of Daking Hall, and saw that the civil and military officials of the entire court were already waiting for them in Daking Hall. Dismount and follow me. Wu Ji was afraid that Su Tong didn't understand the rules, so he hurriedly told him to dismount, and then led Su Tong into the main hall with rapid strides. Before entering the palace gate, he clasped his hands in his fists and bent down to enter the palace. Your Majesty, Wu Ji pays homage to the Emperor, long live my Emperor, long live, long live. After Wu Ji finished shouting, it was Su Tong and others' turn to kneel down and praise the Emperor's grace. Xian. Wuji, Wuzhe, Maji, Zhaoyang, Li Bo, enter the palace. The eunuch holding a fly whisk stepped forward and called out the names of Wuji and others one after another. However, everyone was startled and found that the name of Su Tong and Yang Hong was not among them. Wuji raised his head in confusion for a moment and glanced at the eunuch in front of him. Eunuch Shui, didn't the emperor declare Shen Wuhao? The eunuch nodded calmly and urged them to enter the palace quickly. Seeing this, everyone did not dare to delay and stood up one after another to enter the hall, leaving Su Tong half kneeling outside the hall. Su Tong sighed, knowing that this was a threat to him, but there was nothing he could do about it. A high-ranking official would crush others to death. This principle was not so comfortable for him. This is the threshold for worshipping in the court, the rules, restraints, and shackles. If you are a land god, a master of rivers and lakes, or an emperor, you will be in love with a bird but not a bird. If you're in a good mood, I'll call you emperor, if you're in a bad mood, you. But when you put on this official attire, you are a land god, and you have to kneel. In the main hall, the decrees of enfeoffment and awards were issued one after another. Wuji was granted the title of Prince of the County. Although he was not a prince, he was the only king with a different surname in the past decades. Others were also promoted to 3 levels, and were awarded gold, silver, and various treasures. I don't know if it was because of his words, but Wuji focused on introducing Li Bo and repeatedly emphasized Li Bo's contribution. It can be seen that Wuji really likes this boy, and he is so stunned that he is stunned for a while. In the end, Emperor Long Yan was so pleased that he directly rewarded him with a sword named Long Tu Cheng. This sword seems to be the emperor's sword. Li Bo hasn't seen the specific attributes yet, but thinking about it, it won't be much worse. Only after everyone had finished awarding rewards, the emperor seemed to remember Su Tong. After saying a few words to the eunuch beside him, he saw the eunuch nodded, turned around and came outside the main hall. Marquis Shenwu, the emperor allows you to wait in the imperial study room, so come with me. Obviously the emperor did not plan to meet Su Tong at the court meeting. This move caught many ministers who had originally prepared to find the right time to participate in Su Tong's performance unprepared. Su Tong nodded and followed the eunuch. Your Majesty, this Shen Wuhao. Upon seeing this, a minister was about to speak immediately, but before he could say anything, he was forcibly taken over by Zhao Meng, who was sitting on the dragon chair. Marquis Shenwu is arrogant and domineering, but at a young age he is already at the top of the world and has great military exploits. He is a young man who is wild and unruly. Today I will personally train him. After Zhao Meng finished speaking, he changed his tone and said, it is decreed that Marquis Shenwu is lawless and exaggerated. He will be fined for 3 years. In addition, I have drafted a decree to grant him 3,000 fertile fields, a royal mansion, and 600 horses, 5,000 taels of gold and other rewards. All the rewards will be taken back, thinking of his youth, and retaining his title and official position to see the consequences. After saying that, Zhao Meng looked at Su Fan who was standing aside. What do you think, Uncle Guo? Su Fan was so smart and thought to himself, I think the pie is not big enough. In Su Fan's view, the emperor's rewards were purely for show. There was no need to give them in real terms anyway, so it would be better to draw them bigger. However, he did not dare to say these words from his mouth, so he could only cooperate and said, my emperor is wise. Seeing the two of them singing along and cancelling the matter, all the ministers naturally looked a little unhappy, but Su Lai seemed to have expected this. Upon seeing this, he immediately said, the emperor is right. I feel that Marquis Shenwu is indeed a talent, but he still needs to be sharpened before he can become a real magic weapon for me. After speaking, his voice changed. Although our army won a great victory in this battle, it also suffered a lot of losses. I propose that in the spring of next year, we can send envoys to the northern barbarians. At that time, We can invite Marquis Xinliu to go with us to sharpen our skills. Substituting merit for crime. As soon as these words came out, the ministers immediately reacted and wrote letters to support the proposal. Seeing this, Zhao Meng frowned and thought for a moment, it's accurate. At the same time, on the other side, Su Tong, led by eunuch Shui, walked forward along the corridor. At this moment, eunuch Shui had a different face. Don't blame me, Marquis. The emperor is also in trouble. The emperor is pleased with all the things you have done. He asked our family to send a message to the Marquis. It is natural that you should be made a duke. It's just that there are too many trivial matters in the court. Instead of being here, it's better to have a cordial relationship in private than to argue over there. If the emperor can do this, Yang Hongding will be devastated and repay his kindness to the country. Su Tong put on a deeply moved expression and said two words that were against his will. Out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly noticed a small temple standing under the palace building nearby. When he looked at it, he immediately felt an extremely strong sense of oppression. Taking a closer look, the three characters Jinwu Temple are hanging on it. It is obvious that this is the place where the Jinwu monument is stored. Su Tong noted the location and planned to find an opportunity to release the 5 fur balls and see if he could steal them. Then he followed eunuch Shui to the imperial study room, and asked the young eunuch to bring snacks, indicating that Su Tong could sit down and wait. Su Tong was relaxed and natural, with no stage fright at all. He sat down and tasted the snacks slowly. Compared to the last time I entered the palace, when I went to meet the Empress of Zhou dynasty, I really felt the pressure at that time. But this time, there was no longer the feeling of being crushed by the imperial power to the point of being unable to breathe. Even though the presence of the forbidden martial monument in the palace suppressed his cultivation to the level of Taoism, he was confident that if he wanted to leave the forbidden palace, the emperor would have no choice but to do anything to him. Needless to say, this snack tastes really good. It's crispy in the mouth, glutinous when chewed, sweet and not greasy, and leaves a fragrant aroma on your lips and teeth. While Su Tong was eating, he looked at the study in front of him. Huh. When he saw a painting on the wall, Su Tong's expression changed. This painting is not outstanding. In this era when there are as many great masters as dogs, there are many outstanding painters, and there are even many people who have become Taoists through painting. The one in front of me seems particularly inconspicuous. Amidst the white mountains and black waters, a cherry tree stood there. Under the tree, a Taoist priest sat holding a wine gourd and drinking. It's just that the Taoist priest in the painting only has a back view. If it weren't for the Taoist bun on his head, Su Tong wouldn't have recognized him as a Taoist priest. Su Tong looked at this portrait and couldn't help but be in a trance for a while, and began to wonder a little bit in his heart. I see, this old guy, I didn't expect that he hit it quite deeply. At this moment, there was a sudden sound of footsteps, and the eunuch on duty outside the door shouted loudly, "The emperor has arrived." I bow to the emperor. Hearing the eunuch singing loudly outside that the emperor has arrived, Su Tong came to his senses, immediately stood up from his seat, walked out of the room, bowed deeply and bowed forward. "I love you, no courtesy." An unusually pleasant voice came in. Su Tong stood up straight and focused his eyes on the emperor. He saw that the emperor was about the same age as himself. He was wearing a crown with a sky crown, 24 curly beams on it, and a red gauze robe woven with clouds and dragons. This young man is the same age as himself, and his appearance is more delicate and elegant. His face is like white jade, his aura is strong, his steps are steady, and he has the air to control the world. This is the current king of Daqian, Zhao Meng. In the content of the script that I have read, there is only 2 words mentioning Zhao Meng, emperor. Other than that there is no other information. But think about it, after all, in the last round of players, even by the end of the mission, their official positions failed to reach the 5th level. Not to mention entering the palace to meet the saint, I am afraid that his name is not even qualified to appear in front of Zhao Meng. Sit down, don't be restrained. I just made you suffer a little, but it was all for outsiders to see. There is no need to be restrained when you get here. Zhao Meng's face was pleasant, as if he was talking to a close friend, and he was particularly kind to Su Tong. Su Tong nodded, looking particularly relaxed. Zhao Meng briefly asked Su Tong what happened when he was fighting outside. Su Tong answered fluently. Seeing that the circle was almost complete, Zhao Meng glanced at the eunuchs beside him. Back off. The eunuch lowered his voice and quickly retreated from the study with the group of people. After all these people left, Zhao Meng saw Su Tong's eyes still staring at the last cake on the plate, and couldn't help but shook his head. If you like to eat, I will give you some later. Thank you, Your Majesty. Su Tong stood up and answered respectfully. Hey. There is no one around at this moment. You don't need to call me the Emperor. Call me Senior Brother. Su Tong raised his head and suddenly shouted towards Zhao Meng. This time it was Zhao Meng's turn to be stunned. After being stunned for a few seconds, Zhao Meng immediately shook his head and said, What does Wu Ho mean? How did I become your senior brother? Senior brother entered the profession earlier than me, so he is my senior brother. Su Tong blinked at Zhao Meng, then picked up the last cake on the plate and stuffed it into his mouth, eating and complaining at the same time. Master is so cruel. In order to let my senior brother get the innate divine fetus safely, he just put a big black pot on my head. If I hadn't inspired my spirit, I would have died outside. It's a pity that Master couldn't survive the battle at Luyuepi and dispersed. Senior brother, we are the only ones left in our group. The more Su Tong talked, the sadder he became. He gnawed at the pancake in his hand, but tears already filled his eyes. It seemed that only by eating hard could he forget the pain in his heart. Seeing this, Zhao Meng's nose twitched, and he quickly raised his head. After a moment of silence, he said, What did he say in the end? Said. Su Tong lowered his head, paused for a moment, and then imitated Chang Kong Taoist Zhang Yishan's emphasis, I left a bottle of wine for you under the cherry tree. It is Master's wedding gift to you. Hiss. Even though Zhao Meng already felt that he was disguised very well, when he heard these words, he could no longer hold back the tears in his eyes. When he was taken down the mountain, the old Taoist priest sent him 30 miles away, saying that he would come back to see him when he got married. But then during the wedding, I waited and waited, but never saw the old Taoist priest again. It was not until recently that he heard the news that the old Taoist priest had betrayed Longhu Mountain with something. Soon after, someone secretly handed something to him. I thought that was the old Taoist priest's compensation for himself. But when he heard this, he realized that his master had been thinking about him all these years. For a moment, Zhao Meng couldn't help but look at the painting hanging on the wall. He took a deep breath to calm down. He looked back at Yang Hong, whose face was full of grievances and stubbornness. The original plan in his heart was shattered. He reached out and patted Yang Hong on the shoulder, I've wronged you, junior brother. Brother. Su Tong screamed, hugged Zhao Meng around the waist, and let out bursts of wailing, as if he wanted to vent all the grievances in his stomach. So much so that the guards and eunuchs outside the royal study had confused faces, wondering what happened inside to make Marquis Xinwu cry so sadly. The Holy Lord is indeed a wise king. It was so simple to make the Xinwu Hao burst into tears and return to the Holy Lord. Eunuch Xue looked proud. He was a little worried at first, but he didn't expect that the emperor had already scolded the famous Marquis Xinwu to tears in just one stick of incense. I guess it must be the emperor's holy teachings that have touched the soul of Lord Xinwu. After crying loudly, the imperial study finally became quiet. After a while, Zhao Meng's voice was heard, bring the things in. Hearing this, Eunuch Shwe quickly signaled to the guards behind him and carried a large wooden box inside. Although the box is not big, 8 people used wooden sticks as thick as bowls and 3 iron ropes to carry it into the imperial study. Boom, there was a sound. The box was placed on the ground and actually smashed the blue bricks of the study room. Eunuch Shwe looked up and saw the emperor cordially holding Su Tong's arm and walking up to him, saying to Su Tong, "I know you have had a hard journey and I know you have been wronged. This is the treasure I have prepared for you. Please open it, have a look." Hearing this, Su Tong quickly wiped the corners of his eyes, walked to the box, opened the box and took a look inside. I was immediately shocked by what was inside the box. In the box, I saw a set of mountain armor, red armor, dragon helmet, beast twist, full of domineering. Zhao Meng on the side said with a face full of pride, "This set of red dragon gold crystal armor is the divine armor forged by Taizong of Daqian. It is the compensation I give you." Su Tong took a deep breath and looked back at his senior brother. Thousands of words condensed into one sentence in his heart: "Senior brother, you have lost your mind." Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 989. Red Dragon Gold Crystal Armor. It uses gold crystals from the Kunlun Mountains and is mixed with red copper from the 5 mountains. It is said that in order to refine this set of armor, the Ministry of Industry was subordinated to the Jiafang department and almost half of the top craftsmen were mobilized. There are 150 master blacksmiths and 7 Dao-level blacksmiths. The leader of these blacksmiths is an anonymous old man invited by the Ministry of Works. The old man's surname and first name cannot be found out, but the day this armor was cast, this is how he became enlightened, which shows that its casting technology has reached the level of uncanny craftsmanship. In addition, this armor also invited 7 elders from the Genji Alliance, the head of Zushan sect, to bless it with talismans, blessings, and Taoism. The elaborate craftsmanship and huge expenditure are unheard of. Only the imperial court in the world can cast such a magical weapon in such a way. Taizong originally wanted to use this armor to send his army northward to complete the unification, but he died young. When Taizhu was dying, he once said that whoever could lead his army northward would be given this armor. But later on, Tianqin's national power declined rapidly, so that this armor was enshrined in the ancestral temple for nearly 100 years. Originally, the late emperor wanted to give the set of armor to Su Lai, but Su Lai refused to lead his troops north, saying that the time was not coming and he had to wait. Finally, he got a clue. As a result, 16 years ago, Zhang Xian punched Su Lai 3 times and fled in panic, losing his fortune as a country. As a result, there were frequent disasters in the country, and the opportunity to annex Xiankun was missed and delayed again. Now, Zhao Meng has given this set of armor to Su Tong. On the one hand, it is to support Su Tong and create a constraint on Su Lai. On the other hand, it is full of expectations for Su Tong's future, hoping that he can lead his troops northward and complete the unification. Zhao Meng gently stroked his armor with his palms, and stared at Su Tong with an unabashed fierceness in his eyes. "Marquis Xinwu, you must understand my thoughts. Don't worry, Your Majesty, I will work hard for you and work hard to repay the Emperor's kindness." After getting the benefit, Su Tong's mouth felt like it was covered with honey, and he looked like he wanted to dig out his heart and lungs. Eunuch Shwe on the other side was moved by it. The eyes he looked at the Emperor were full of admiration, and he felt more and more that his master was a sage and wise king. A few words could make a rebellious figure like Shen Wuhao bow his head and worship him like a god. After finishing talking about the scene, Zhao Meng immediately changed his stern demeanor and pulled Su Tong to stand up. "Come on, quickly put on this suit of armor and show me." When someone was asked to help Su Tong undress and take off his belt, Su Tong was given this armor to put on. This suit of armor is naturally very heavy, weighing 1,000 kilograms. Even if Su Tong has the body of an immortal, wearing it is very difficult. But fortunately, The armor is not a dead thing, but a divine weapon. Stimulated by Su Tong's pure yang energy, the beauty in the armor revives and becomes lighter and lighter. Even if there were some parts that didn't fit well, the armor could adjust itself to a perfect match with Su Tong. Su Tong tried to raise his palms, only to feel that the armor on his body was perfectly integrated with his pure yang energy. What made him even more delighted was that there were two sets of talismans hidden in the sleeves of the armor. Among these two sets of talismans, there is actually another talisman that implies the power of time, which is the Flying Void talisman among the Taoist Kimen talismans. The specific effect is unclear, but since it contains the power of time, it should be related to time. The other talisman is the 5 elements escape technique, which can be used to enter and leave the battlefield in an instant. In addition, this armor seems to have other abilities. Before Su Tong could appreciate it carefully, Zhao Meng praised it repeatedly. Okay, okay, okay. Bring up the mirror. Zhao Meng looked at Su Tong, who was wearing the armor, his eyes lit up, as if he saw another himself, and he hurriedly asked someone to bring the mirror over. Su Tong looked in the mirror and saw himself in the mirror wearing a battle armor, and his whole temperament was instantly sublimated. He was like a young god of war, with an air and temperament like that of a celestial general. Pass the decree and confer the titles of Marquis Xinwu and Taibao Xinwu, and grant him a manor, 3,000 taels of silver, and 300 slaves. Thank you, your majesty. Su Tong bent down to thank him. Then Zhao Meng even took him to have dinner with him, and the two chatted until late at night before sending Su Tong out of the palace. When Su Tong left the palace gate, he found that Su Fan was waiting for him outside the palace gate. You're finally out. Su Fan saw Su Tong and hurriedly came up to him, but he was startled when he stepped forward and found that Su Tong was actually wearing a red armor. Red dragon gold crystal armor. Did the emperor give you the set of armor? Su Fan, as the uncle of the state, had of course seen the suit of armor and couldn't help but exclaimed, Brother Yang, you are so lucky. My father had been coveting the suit of armor for a long time, but fate played a trick on him and he missed the opportunity several times. I can't believe the suit of armor ended up in your hands. Su Tong nodded, looked Su Fan up and down and said, How long have you been waiting here? Haha, let's go drink. Su Fan grinned and took Su Tong to drink. Su Tong stretched out his hand to grab Su Fan's pulse and found that this guy's hands were cold. In such a cold day, this guy had been waiting here for a whole day. Even though Su Tong knew in his heart that Su Fan was deliberately trying to win over him, he was still quite touched in his heart. After all, there are some things that everyone knows, but not everyone can do. The two of them drove straight to the restaurant, ordered a large table of delicious food, and chatted while eating. Su Fan didn't hide anything from Su Tong. Pointing at the armor on Su Tong, he asked with a smile, Brother Yang, does he know how much it cost to build this armor? Have no idea. Su Fan raised his finger, a total of 800,000 taels of gold. This figure really shocked Su Tong. The last time he asked Penkai, his old bald donkey only wanted 50,000 gold. Hee, of course this is not the cost of the armor, but the total cost is quite a bit more. Because Su Lai was almost able to obtain this armor, Su Fan specially sent people to the Ministry of Industry to get the casting records of this armor, which included the cost of casting this armor. You don't know this by looking at it, but you'll be shocked at the sight of it. The expense is so huge that it's almost astonishing. Among them, 100,000 taels were directly rewarded to Longhu Mountain. 50,000 taels were given to Shenzhuzong. The 50,000 taels are for the mysterious old craftsman. 187,050 taels are given to the Ministry of Works, and the craftsmen are rewarded with silver. These expenses alone have already spent almost half of it, and collecting Kunshan gold crystals has cost nearly 160,000 yuan. The red copper from the 5 mountains is more than 100,000. Other valuable treasures were also added, which was another huge expense. Therefore, the real cost of this armor is not that much, but looking at it, no one in the world has the strength to build this armor anymore. Speaking of this, Su Fan lowered his voice and said, "So, there are so many sects in the world, even a 1,000-year-old religion like Longhu Mountain can't compare with the imperial court." When Su Tong heard this, he was immediately moved. Yes, the best place for practitioners in the world is precisely above the court, which occupies the world's resources. As long as the emperor needs it, he can send countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures with a wave of his ink pen. It's just that it's very difficult for an emperor to practice cultivation. After all, if you want to be a good emperor, you have to turn yourself into an overtime maniac and a coward, and you may be rebelled by your subordinates. Taking a detailed look at the past dynasties, it seems that the only one who can truly be a good emperor and not delay his own practice is the eldest princess's biological grandfather, the Emperor Jiajing of the Ming dynasty. Thinking of this, Su Tong couldn't help but think about Zhao Meng. In fact, he also saw the painting and realized that Zhao Meng was Zhang Yishan's apprentice. The old guy Zhang Yishan hid his secrets too deeply. Who would have thought that his disciple would be the current emperor of Daqian? That innate divine fetus can help people leap to the sky. Zhao Meng received the innate divine fetus, and with the huge resources of the imperial court, it was not difficult to become the best in the world in a short period of time. In this way, plus himself, Tiangan is equal to 3 earthly immortals. There is only one Xiaolishan in the northern barbarians, and it is obvious that he cannot stand alone. It will only be a matter of time before he is defeated by Tiangan. Of course, this is true on the surface, but isn't it enough that 2 monks fetch water and 3 monks have no water to drink? Su Lai, Zhao Meng, including himself, everyone seemed to be united as kings and ministers, but there were many things hidden in their stomachs. In addition, there is a Shangqing Dao behind him, and there is a Yuankai divine sect on the other side of the northern barbarians. Good guy, if everyone puts aside their hearts, it will probably make the sky dim and the earth dark. The 2 of them were eating and drinking. Su Tong even took out a fire knife. He thought that Su Fan would not be able to get used to the drink, but he didn't expect that Su Fan drank a glass and called it a good wine. He was so drunk that he drank alone. The drunken Su Fan cursed people all the way, his father, his mother, and the damn world. At the end of the curse, he started crying again. The servants in the mansion wanted to help Su Fan into the room to rest, but Su Fan held Su Tong in his arms and refused to let go. Perhaps only with Su Tong here, Su Fan can truly sleep peacefully. Su Tong could only wait for Su Fan to fall asleep before getting up and going back to his room, taking off his armor. Put it in the prop book and take a look at the attribute entries. Once the battle armor is transformed into a prop card, a dynamic cover immediately appears, a line of red soars up, and finally turns into a suit of battle armor. Not to mention, the dynamic effect alone looks quite bluffing. Looking at the attribute entries again, Su Tong was inevitably a little moved. Red Dragon Gold Crystal Armor LV1. The red copper of the 5 mountains, the crystal of Kunshan, was cast with the strength of the country. The red dragon ascended to the sky and fought against the 8 wastelands again. Passive Skill 1, Shengziu Hidden Spirit, LV1. It can be refined with the soul sacrifice and hidden in the soul. The stronger the spirituality, the higher the defense of the armor. Passive Skill 2, Zuyu de Tian Mo, LV1. The wearer injects his own strength into the armor, which can activate the power of Zuyu and transform into a great demon, temporarily increasing his overall physical fitness by 3 times. Active Skill 1, Dao Talisman Figzu, LV1. It consumes 3000 script points. After activation, you can briefly control the surrounding time to pause for 1 second. Cooling time, 30 hours. Active Skill 2, Taoist Talisman 5 Elements Escape, LV1. It consumes 3000 script points. After activation, you can use the power of the 5 elements to escape quickly. Duration, 5 minutes. Cooling time, 10 hours. After reading the entry for the battle armor, Su Tong could only say that he was indeed very wealthy. As Su Fan said, it would be impossible to produce such a battle armor again without using the power of the country. Just asking Long Hushan and Shen Zusek to bless the armor is impossible. Even if they are rich, they can't do it without overwhelming power. Su Tong tried to call out the battle armor, and when he grabbed it with the power of his soul, he saw that the battle armor turned into a ray of red light and merged into his soul. When I want to wear it, I only need a thought to come to my mind naturally, which is surprisingly convenient. Then Su Tong's heart moved, and he let go of reality. He took the cakes given to him by the emperor and got up to go home. He was just in time to reorganize the newly conquered Yin soldiers and take a look at the results on his treasure tree. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 990. New Year's Eve, Wuhao Mansion. The candied haws on a stick is so delicious, you should eat one too. The goddess was wearing a bright red cotton padded jacket, holding a bunch of candied haws in her hand, and jumped up to Su Tong. Su Tong shook his head. He didn't like this, it was too sweet. But the goddess didn't care, she sat down happily holding the candied haws and started eating. Su Tong sat on a chair and looked at the heavy snow outside, inevitably thinking of his master and the others. It has been more than 2 months, and there has been no news from master and the others since they went to the city of Fuzi. When he went back last time, he brought the goddess out, planning to wait for New Year's Eve. Master and the others were back, and the family sat together to have a New Year's Eve dinner to celebrate the new year. As a result, I still don't believe it. He called out the props book and saw 3 more title cards in the props book. These 3 title cards. I have to say that Mr. May's training was really good, making the wishing tree grow tall, big, and straight, and it produced a total of 3 golden fruits. After each fruit was split, the title card given to it was the best. Excellent. They are Little King card. Time Apprentice Retrograde Sequence 1 Knowledge Seeker. Retrograde Sequence 1 Knowledge Seekers. Title Skill, Skill Explosion. It consumes 300 script points and the attack skills released after activation will cause twice the damage. Duration, 30 seconds. Cooling time, 10 hours. The title skills of this item card are no worse than other titles. The most important thing is that, with the Retrograde Badge Fuxian and Retrograde Sequence 3 Seeker in my hand, I have completed the 3 Retrograde series. Bond. 2 bonds, all skills add 1. 3 bonds, all resistance increased by 30%. 5 bonds, increase all physical attributes by 200% and unlock the ultimate skills of the Retrograde series. Although the improvement effect of the 3 bonds is not strong, it is not the end, because the next 2 prop cards are the focus. Time Apprentice. Time skills are doubled. Title skill, Time Stone. Consume script points and intercept the power of a period of time to create a time gem. A large number of script points will be consumed during the production process, and will increase with the quality of time captured. Duration, 1 minute. If the gem cannot be successfully produced within 1 minute, the judgment will be failed. Cooling time is 48 hours. Note, the most romantic thing I can think of is to turn a moment into eternity. What a romantic skill, even Su Tong, a single guy, fell silent. Can you not be silent? He tried this skill and evaporated nearly 10,000 script points from himself. The most important thing is that it failed. You know, you have the bonus of the touch of time, plus the passive bonus of the title. It can last 4 minutes on its own. But when I actually operated it, I found that it was more difficult than I expected. His wife was by his side at the time, and when she saw that he failed, she smiled and told him that if he wanted to make a time stone, it would take at least 10 minutes for him to have a chance to make it. When Su Tong heard this, he rolled his eyes. Good guy, this co-authored skill is just for you to see. Unless one day you extend your time ability to 10 minutes, don't even think about it. But aside from this skill, I still made money. Being able to double the passive attributes is of great help to me. Whether it is Time Walker's active skill Traveler's Seal or Touch of Time, it will be greatly improved. And this prop card is actually not the strongest. What really made me call Mei Lao Niubi was the last title card Xiao Wan card. When this title card appeared, Su Tong realized that having an old man in the family is like having a treasure. It was not unreasonable that Mr. Mei could suppress the luck of half of Qing Cheng Mountain. Xiao Wan card. All title bonds of the holder of this title add 1. Title skill, Little Festival. Use any title card as a sacrifice to exchange for the specified title bond add 1 effect. Duration, 3 hours. Cooling time, 30 days. This title card really went beyond Su Tong's imagination. He didn't expect to have such a heaven-defying title. With this title card, you can gather 5 bonds in your retrograde series and unlock the ultimate title skill. But I can't help but worry a little bit in my heart, because I threw all the unnecessary rubbish titles to the wishing tree. Even if there is only one left, I will probably be so happy now. But no matter what, my wishing tree has definitely made a lot of money. Of course, this is thanks to the old tree of Mei Lao. Putting away the props book, Su Tong lay on the chair, thinking that the wishing tree of Gao Zhou and the 3 of them looked good, and he didn't know what kind of title they could give. It's just that the 3 of them are not with him at the moment, so they can only put it aside for the time being, and wait until after the Spring Festival, when he and Su Fan are on an envoy to the northern barbarians. Zhao Meng gave him a manor and 300 slaves. The garden was not big, but it was not small either. The courtyard with 6 entrances and 6 exits is completely in the architectural style of the Jiangnan water town. Each step brings different scenery. Now that it's snowing heavily, it's even more special. Su Tong also took advantage of this period of time to calm down and practice the Nirvana Sutra with peace of mind. He has now reached the 4th level and is still 3 levels away from reaching perfection. This progress has been very fast, and this is because I have a certain foundation in Buddhism. But starting from the 4th level, it's not that easy. However, even at the 4th level, Su Tong's soul has still undergone tremendous changes. His soul has become more and more like a god. In the past, he could not detect many subtle things, but now he is in the soul. Under the observation, there is no hiding of clarity. Now, if he uses the move of 1 inch of time again, he will no longer have the symptoms of blood surge. It's no wonder that Master Ming Hai can accurately tell the time of his death. At this point, there is no possibility of evading many things. It only takes one step further to gain insight into the nature of all things. Su Tong also plans to wait until after New Year's Eve to take the Pure Yang distracting pill to give himself the ability to split thoughts. At that time, I will truly be able to jump out of the chessboard and be qualified to compete with the person on top of the immortal. Master Ho. At this time, the servant hurriedly walked in and said to Su Tong, "Uncle Guo is here." Su Tong nodded, stood up and glanced at the goddess playing in the snow in the yard, then turned and walked towards the front hall. When they arrived at the front hall, Su Fan had already walked in with someone. Large and small gift boxes were placed on the ground. As soon as Su Fan entered the door, he hurriedly walked to the charcoal stove and rubbed his hands. His face was slightly pale, as if the thick leather jacket on his body had no effect at all. It's Chinese New Year, so don't stay at home and don't run around. Su Tong stepped forward, stretched out his hand and placed it on Su Fan's wrist, injecting a ray of pure yang energy into Su Fan's body. During this period, Su Fan ate the dragon rice given to him by Su Tong every day, and his health was much better than before. In the past, Su Fan would be terribly cold every winter and relied on various ginseng elixirs in the mansion to survive. But this year, Su Fan no longer has to endure such hardships. He only needs to watch the heater. Being rushed by Su Tong's pure yang qi, Su Fan immediately felt that most of the coldness on his body had dissipated. He grinned at Su Tong. It's not as comfortable as living here at home. Lu Ji is about to give birth. The way my father looked at me during this period made him want to come and stab me at any time, not to mention that they had already stopped. You are willing to sit at the same table with me and have New Year's Eve dinner. After all, he is a person with a criminal record. Let alone sitting together to eat, I am afraid that even the things he touches will be thrown out. Seeing Su Fan say this, Su Tong could only follow his intention and said, "Come on, the wing has been prepared for you. If you want to live in it, you can come and lie there. Even if Lu Ji gives birth to a baby, Su Lai can still come. Will I kill you in my mansion? That's not the case, but it's hard to say when I'm on an envoy to the northern barbarians, and Xiao Lishan will have a hard time with it." Su Fan sat down, casually took the heater brought by his servants, held it in his arms, and sat on a chair nearby. "When I came, I asked someone to call Wu Zhe. I guess this guy will come later, and let's have a good time together. I have prepared the wine and food." Su Tong's brows moved slightly, and he immediately caught what Su Fan said. "So, Wu Zhe is also on the list of people sent as envoys?" "Yes, Wu Zhe is here too. In addition, the emperor has allocated 4,000 cavalry quota for you. When we go on an envoy, you can just go directly to the Yangzhou camp to recruit troops." This decree has not yet come down, but Su Fan has already obtained inside information through his own channels. While the two were talking, a servant came to report that Wu Zhe had arrived. Not only Wu Zhe had arrived, but Li Bo also came with him as a personal guard. The deserted home mansion suddenly became lively. At the same time, in the imperial study room of the palace, Zhao Meng was looking at the memorial submitted by Si Tianjian Shen Kuo. Shen Kuo said in a deep voice, "I have consulted historical records and calculated 7 times day and night. We can be sure that the comet that hit the moon appeared on June 23 RD. You sure?" Zhao Meng looked at the date written on the memorial and asked with a frown. "It's absolutely true. I'm willing to use my family's life as a guarantee." Faced with Shen Kuo's assurance, Zhao Meng finally felt relieved, closed his eyes, and raised the corner of his mouth slightly. "Thank you for your hard work, I King. I know that you have been in Si Tianjian these days, and you have never even met your family. I don't dare. It is the duty of a minister to share the emperor's worries. Somebody come." Zhao Meng called out and saw eunuch Shui walking in immediately. It is conveyed that Shen Kuo is a loyal man and serves the country and the people. He is granted the title of Marquis of Chang'an and is given 100 taels of gold and 300 acres of fertile land. After saying this, Zhao Meng looked at Shen Kuo with a smile. "My dear, Si Tianjian is of a special nature. I cannot directly reward you with an official position, but you can rest assured that I will not treat you Shen family badly. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your kindness." Shen Kuo quickly bowed and thanked him. Zhao Meng patted Shen Kuo on the shoulder. "Let's go, tonight is New Year's Eve, and we have to stay up late. You should go back early to spend time with your family." "Yes." Shen Kuo breathed a sigh of relief, carefully bowed his hands, and immediately retreated. After Shen Kuo left, Zhao Meng walked to the desk, casually wrote a word on a piece of yellow paper, then came to the painting on the wall, reached out and opened the painting, and found something behind the painting. A hidden grid. Zhao Meng threw the yellow paper with the word "kill" written on it into the secret grid, turned around and walked out of the imperial study. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 991. In the side room, a huge food box was opened, and various exquisite dishes were served on the table. A clear charcoal pot is placed in the middle, but instead of eating mutton, you eat fish. Try this. It's a special offering. It was originally meant for my father, but I ended up cutting it all off. Su-fan pointed to the sliced sashimi on the plate. Each slice was just the right size and thickness. Libo just looked at it carefully and thought to himself, isn't this just grass carp? Boiled grass carp in plain water? This country uncle has never eaten any good pork. In fact, Su Tong didn't understand that grass carp had a strong fishy smell, and it couldn't be suppressed without adding some spices, let alone boiling it in water. But seeing the enthusiastic look on Su-fan's face, Su Tong couldn't refuse. He tried to pick up a piece and put it in his mouth, and his expression suddenly became weird. Not only did this fish have no fishy smell, it tasted exceptionally fresh and sweet, and most importantly, it tasted so crunchy that Su Tong even doubted whether he was eating fish. This was indeed the first time he had eaten such delicious fish, so he immediately signaled to Libo, a fool, not to be stunned and to eat quickly. Libo didn't believe it at first, but after taking a bite, he realized that it tasted so delicious. The smooth, tender, and crunchy texture completely subverted his understanding of fish. Seeing everyone eating from ear to ear, Su-fan K explained with a smile, this fish is specially raised. It is fed broad beans from the beginning to grow up. A fish is fed from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and its taste becomes crispy, tender, and elastic teeth. Paired with this special sauce, it's a must-have fish. This fish has been fed for a year and eats more expensively than humans, so the taste naturally has a unique flavor. Everyone was eating and drinking, and before they knew it, it was the third watch. Boom! 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 At this time, the bells of Lingyan Temple could be heard outside the window, and the bells rippled throughout Linen Mansion. Looking around, the lights of every house were not extinguished, just like daylight. The theory of keeping the year old has been around since the Jin dynasty. The custom of keeping the year old, also known as staying up late, is the custom of not sleeping on the last night of the old year and staying up late to welcome the arrival of the new year. A poet wrote a poem about this. Every family should not be lying down when they stay up late for the New Year's Eve, and they will be dreaming of lovesickness. Sushi also wrote a poem, after sitting for a long time, the lamp embers are falling, and I get up to watch the Baidu tilt. On this day all year round, there will be no curfew. Not only will there be no curfew, but people will also be allowed to have carnivals outside, with lantern festivals and singing parties. Even some rich and powerful people queued up outside the gate of Lingyan Temple early, spending huge sums of money in order to burn the first stick of incense this year. It sounds very romantic and lively, but in fact, it's not the case. Rich people want the lights to be brightly lit and the traffic in front of the door to be busy. But ordinary people were huddled around a bonfire, guarding a dead lamp. As Su Yunyo wrote, it was like staying up all night. We were cold and hungry, and were about to prepare some hot water to drink. Suddenly the county governor came again and immediately forced us to go to the city. Squeak! A firework flew into the sky over the imperial city, followed by a boom, and the entire sky exploded with a loud bang. Then came the crackling sound of firecrackers and countless deafening fireworks. Su Tong didn't see Tianu around, so he signaled to Su Fan and Li Bo to eat and drink first. He got up and walked outside the yard. When he looked up, he saw Tianu sitting on the roof alone. Don't stay on the roof, come down quickly. Seeing this, Su Tong jumped up to the roof, stretched out his hand to take the little girl in his hand. Let's go down, let's go eat something delicious. The goddess shook her head and shook the candied haws on her hand. I don't like eating those things. I haven't seen these fireworks for a long time. Why not sit here and watch the fireworks, and... Having said this, the goddess looked towards the north of the city and said, there are people fighting over there. I saw it was very lively. Fight. Su Tong was startled. What are you doing during the Chinese New Year? I'm afraid it's not a few drunkards who are drunk and acting crazy. But then I thought about it, and it seems that the goddess's aesthetic sense is not that bad. He looked in the direction pointed by the goddess, and when he opened his eyes, Su Tong's expression suddenly became serious. That was not a fight, but a chase. 5 enlightened masters, hunt down one more person. Su Tong frowned. This New Year's Eve person didn't want to stop anyone. After thinking for a moment, he finally couldn't suppress the curiosity in his heart. After signaling the goddess to wait for him here, he put on a nightclothes and followed her up quietly. Shua shwa shwa. A figure galloped forward, running 1,000 meters away in the jungle in an instant. Its movement not only implied the method of shrinking the earth into an inch, but also implied the 5 elements and 8 trigrams. As it moved left and right, the figure was erratic and charming. The shadow passed without a trace, not even a single footprint was left on the snow, making it elusive. But behind this man were 5 other people, following behind him in a leisurely manner, neither eager to take action, but unwilling to let him go. In just one stick of incense time, the group of people had already rushed out of Linen Mansion and arrived in a deserted wilderness. At this time, the figure running in front suddenly stopped, turned around abruptly, and glared at the 5 people behind him. Guys, you have to be merciful and merciful. It's convenient for others. Why bother to force each other like this? The 5 people stopped and revealed themselves in the darkness, only to see each of them hiding with their faces covered and holding short knives. Faced with these words, they remained silent, just looked at each other and then drew their swords in unison. The 5 people took action quickly, 30 steps, 20 steps, 10 steps. In the blink of an eye, there was a sharp sword aura, a cold breath, and an overwhelming murderous aura. It was like a piece of silver light like an electric python, mixed with the rolling air current like a tornado, and the murderous knife intent pressed down by the mountain. It came so fast that there was no way to dodge it. What a domineering swordsmanship! At this moment, Su Tong had come to the distance quietly and silently. Seeing that the 5 people were so domineering when they took action, he couldn't help but be a little surprised in his heart. Seeing that the 5 people were leaving no room, the middle-aged man was furious and pulled out the soft sword from his waist. Facing the 5 top masters, instead of retreating, he actively stepped forward to meet them. He saw the blade of the sword in his hand waved and threw out a phantom. The sword energy met the sword light. Bang bang bang. In an instant, the sound of swords clashing was loud, and the 6 people fought hundreds of swords in an instant. I saw that the middle-aged man was fighting 1 against 5, but he was not losing at all. The afterimages of the sword light in their hands created long and large sword curtains, and the sword energy exploded, blocking all the sword lights in front of them. However, the 5 people became more and more courageous as they fought, and the power of the swords in their hands became more and more powerful. The more fierce. The long sword in the hands of middle-aged people has become an irrepressible trend. The victory has been decided. When Su Tong saw this, he immediately shook his head and regretted. Although the middle-aged man's swordsmanship was sharp and unique, if 1 versus 3, there was a 70% chance of winning. But with 1 against 5, there is no way to recover. Su Tong estimated that this person would definitely die without a cup of tea at most. The middle-aged man seemed to be aware of his situation. He roared fiercely and endured 3 heavy blows from the sword. He turned the sword in his hand, and the sword shadow suddenly resembled a running wolf and a violent bear. He struck hard in front of him with a fierce blow. On one person's blade. Bang! There was a huge explosion, and the huge force suppressed it, directly cutting a huge gap in the short sword in the opponent's hand. As soon as the sword force was broken, the sword force was turned again. Taking advantage of the opponent's unstable footing, he cut off the wrist holding the knife with a swoop. Then with a flick of the finger, a cold light appeared, and 3 talismans appeared, turning into thousands of golden rains, and suddenly beat this man into a hornet's nest. His body fell heavily to the ground, and he was no longer breathing. But at this moment, the middle-aged man suddenly saw a dark red jade metal in the arms of the corpse. His face suddenly changed and he was so shocked that he was speechless. Secret Guard 13 Eagles, you are the Emperor's people. The middle-aged man's complexion flickered for a while, and those words suddenly came to mind. My dear, the nature of Sci-Fi is special. I can't directly reward you with an official position, but don't worry, I won't treat you Shen family badly. This sentence warmed my heart when I first heard it, but thinking about it now is like drinking ice. When he thought of this, a sad smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face, and he forced the 4 people in front of him back with a sword, letting out a burst of hoarse laughter. Ha 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 ha. The laughter was full of desolation and helplessness. Your Majesty, if you want me to die, I have no choice but to die. Shen Kuo would like to thank you for your kindness and wish you a long and prosperous life. After speaking, he looked coldly at the 4 people beside him. Since it is the Emperor's favor, when will it be your turn to show your teeth and show your claws? After saying that, Shen Kuo swung the long sword in his hand horizontally, and the sword blade lightly scratched, and a ray of hot blood splashed down along the blade. When the 4 of them saw this, they looked at each other, put away their daggers, walked to the body, confirmed that Shen Kuo was dead, bowed their hands to the body, and raised their hands to throw a bottle on the body. The bottle suddenly cracked and a burst of fire engulfed the body quickly. Then the 4 people carried the body of their companion and quickly retreated. After a while, there was only a burning corpse left in the field. Under the swaying light of the fire, a figure walked quietly. He stretched out his hand and saw the void around him changing. A crack ripped open out of thin air, revealing something like the underworld. A hellish world. Immediately afterwards, a pair of hands reached out, grabbed the corpse, grabbed a group of ghosts, and dragged it into it. Treat each other well, don't neglect us. Su Tong said something to the ghost behind the crack, and it disappeared between reality and reality. This person was obviously an important official, but the Emperor wanted to kill him to silence him, fearing that he knew something terrible. I put away his soul for the time being, and then called him back to find out what happened after the storm calmed down. Thinking of this, Su Tong didn't dare to stay here any longer, for fear of being noticed by others. He just saw his figure flicker and disappear quietly into the wilderness. In less than a stick of incense, the person had already returned to the mansion, sent the goddess back to her room to rest, and continued drinking with Su Fan and others. The whole process was unnoticed and no one knew. It wasn't until early the next morning, when Su Tong and others woke up from their beds, that they heard reports from the servants of the mansion that there was a flood in the imperial city last night and that all the officials of Sci-Fi were killed. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 992. Sci-Tianjian's officials were unlucky, but his family was generously rewarded by the emperor. Because of the special nature of Sci-Tianjian, it is like a carrot and a pit, and the father dies and the son takes over. Therefore, some children who are still underage were granted official positions early to ensure that the family would not be affected. Moreover, the emperor has always been very generous, and each family of the officials who died was rewarded a large amount of compensation. Just wait for the 7th day of the first lunar month and the start of the new year. The voices in the court about sending envoys to the northern barbarians became louder and louder, and the ministers began to argue endlessly about how to strive for the best interests. And Su Tong also received the emperor's imperial edict early in the morning, asking him to go to the Yangzhou camp and order 4,000 troops to be ready to send envoys to the northern barbarians at any time. Su Tong could only take Tianv to play in Linen Mansion for another day. After sending the little princess home, he said goodbye to Su Fan and others and set off. Before leaving, Su Tong specially gave Su Fan two Thunder God talisman to save his life. Of course, it was just to comfort him. After all, if Su Lai really wanted to kill him, even giving him the Zixiao God Thunder talisman would be useless, let alone the Thunder God talisman. Fortunately, Lu Ji hadn't given birth yet, and even if she had given birth, Su Lai wouldn't dare to kill the kid rashly before the full moon. After all, in this era, the probability of infant death is still very high. Even if he was born into an emperor's family, it would be the same. Boss, once you leave, I will be the only one left in Linen Mansion. I'm afraid I won't be able to handle it. Li Bo followed Su Tong on horseback and left Linen Mansion, complaining to Su Tong as he walked. What can't be done? You are now the general in the army and the object of Wu Ji's strong support. You took this opportunity to quickly win over a group of cronies in the army. I have a hunch that when I leave, I will not be able to do it when I come back. Our script is almost over this time. Ah! Li Bo was startled. Is this too fast? Su Tong rolled his eyes at him, but didn't explain much to him. On New Year's Eve, the lone soul he brought back was none other than Si Tianjian's supervisor, Shen Kuo. This Si Tianjian is the name of Zai Tianjian, and will also be called Qin Tianjian from now on. I don't know if I have gotten into trouble with this organization, but I can meet people from this organization wherever I go. Su Tong made a deal with Shen Kuo, and Su Tong promised to keep his Shen family safe if there were any changes in the future. Shen Kuo told Su Tong the reason why Emperor wanted to silence him. It can't be said to be a shocking secret, just a rather special date. June 23. Of course, this date was not given out of hand, but was calculated by the entire Si Tianjian, which took more than 2 months of time and effort. If there are no accidents, the comet hitting the moon on this day is a celestial phenomenon that only happens once in 100 years. The so-called comet actually refers to the Broom Star. This Broom Star is the last of the stars and represents disaster, ominousness. When a comet strikes the moon, the world's luck will be in chaos. At that time, whether it is the emperor or Su Lai, everyone's luck will be in chaos. It is a good time to assassinate the king, kill the king, and cause disobedience. As for other things, Shen Kuo didn't know. He probably didn't expect that just one date would kill so many people. It was even more unexpected that this emperor, who was usually generous to others, would kill him, an old minister. Although he had a chance to break out of the encirclement, he did not dare and could not. Because the Shen family is still in Linen Mansion, the whole family is here. Si Tianjian, like Qin Tianjian, has always been an institution affiliated with the royal family. It must be strictly supervised from birth to death. It would be easy to kill him by himself, but he was afraid that no one in his family would survive, so he could only die to repay the emperor's favor. Su Tong asked himself that he was also from Qin Tian prison, and the master Shen in front of him could be regarded as a senior in the same industry, so he did not make things difficult for him, let alone take him to make alchemy. After the two reached an agreement, Su Tong let him go and wished him reincarnate as soon as possible. June 23. Su Tong calculated the days in his mind, which was half a year. It seemed like a long time, but in fact it was just a matter of days. The emperor now holds one of the most powerful innate divine fetuses, and as he is the emperor, this day poses the greatest threat to him, so he may need to take strict precautions. But if it was really just to prevent trouble before it happened, why bother to kill Shen Kuo? Su Tong guessed that the most likely possibility was that the emperor wanted to kill Su Lai. Based on his understanding of Zhao Meng, this guy was definitely not an emperor who was willing to be a puppet. Similarly, Su Fan also said that Su Lai and Xiao Lishan were also planning and preparing for this day. What are the two waiting for all day? Was it regicide that came to power, or did he have other agendas? For a time, all the threads were squeezed into this day, so Su Tong concluded that this day must be dark. If there were no accidents, it would definitely be a big fight, so Li Bo was asked to prepare early. After all, this fat man could always bring something unexpected to others at critical moments. After explaining to Li Bo, Su Tong jumped off the horse, summoned Sun Li and jumped on Sun Li's back, then jumped up and headed towards Yangzhou. It's not yet the beginning of spring, and there is a lot of snow on the road. Looking around, we can see thousands of miles of white snow. Su Tong was not in a hurry to go to the Yangzhou camp. He estimated that it would take 3 to 5 days since the ministers in the imperial court were already arguing. After they had finished arguing, no matter how fast they moved, it would not be easy to let Su Fan, a sick man, go out. It would not take more than 10 days in total. He just took this opportunity to take the Chunyang Divine Distracting Pill, which not only enhanced the power of his soul, but also gave him more ability to protect himself when facing Xiaolishan. Thinking of this, Su Tong opened his eyes were like lightning, and he could see 1,000 miles away. After scanning the surrounding area, he found a good place. It is an unknown mountain. The top of this mountain is already covered with thick snow. It is white for thousands of miles and there is no human habitation. But halfway up the mountain, there was a different scene. Not only was there no snow, but it was as green as spring. As the saying goes, there must be monsters when something is abnormal. Su Tong used his clairvoyance and Minjian Kimen to observe carefully and found that this place was actually a natural geomantic treasure. There are green dragons on the left and right, Suanwu standing behind, and white tigers in front. They are in the position of Zhenyang, where the yang energy of heaven and earth gathers, so it can be evergreen all year round. Su Tong signaled Sun Li to fly over and take a look. This place stood on a cliff. Ordinary people couldn't see it, let alone climb up. He casually summoned the Chunyang sword, and struck it with 2-sword energy. Within a moment, a hole was cut here. After walking in, Su Tong asked Sun Li to guard him outside. Then he took out the pure yang distracting pill from the prop book and put it in his hand. What a pity! If such a good elixir can strengthen you to add 9, it will probably bring about great fortune for me. However, if life is not as good as it should be, 9 times out of 10, it can only be blamed on my lack of luck. After Su Tong said this, he no longer felt sorry, opened his mouth and threw the elixir into his mouth. At the same time, far in the north, Zhongdu, was the backyard of the mansion where Yeliki lived. I saw several naked maids being carried out of the room. After a while, Yeliki walked out of the room refreshed and wearing a snow-white leather robe. Your Highness. Eunuch Chang was already standing behind the door waiting. Your errands have been done well recently. Go and pick out a few things from the inner treasury as rewards. His Highness' happiness is the greatest reward for the slave. It is more important than any gold and silver treasures. Eunuch Chang said with his lips pursed. Sometimes Yeliki hates this Eunuch Chang to death, but he has to say that this guy is really comfortable to use. Especially the flattery shots are very comfortable. The admiration for oneself is like an endless stream of water. Although it sounds very rough and shallow, he, the northern man, is not a sour scholar like Xiankan and Tianqian, so he likes to hear this sound. After tightening his clothes, Yeliki led Eunuch Chang out of the yard, only to see Dizhou waiting in front. After seeing Yeliki coming, he hurried forward to pay his respects. Your Highness, how have you been these days? Dizhou obviously had trouble practicing flattery. Yeliki snorted coldly, Humph, what else can we do? The Yuankai temple has been built. How come there is no news about the reshaping of the body you mentioned at the beginning? Dizhou looked embarrassed, knowing that he had been slapped on the horse's hoof by a horse. He quickly lowered his head. Wait a moment, Your Highness, please don't be anxious. This matter is of great importance. I am not completely sure, so naturally I dare not let Your Highness get involved risk. Dizhou had already figured out a way to reshape his body, but it was extremely dangerous. If something went wrong, Xiaolishan could slaughter his entire Yuan Qi divine sect. Fortunately, Yeliki now has the magic medicine sent by eunuch Chang. Although it cannot be passed down to the next generation, the effect is still quite good. So he wasn't as anxious about this matter as before. After urging him to get it done as soon as possible, his voice changed. I heard from my uncle that Tianqian plans to send envoys to the northern barbarians for peace talks. It's called peace talks, but it's actually blackmail. I don't care about this. I heard that guy will come too. The person in Yeliki's mouth was none other than Yang Hong, the Marquis of Xinwu whom he hated so much. Don't worry, Your Highness, if this person comes, he will definitely be carried around without food. Dichu was full of confidence. As he spoke, he waved his hand and asked someone to carry out the two prisoners. I saw an extra piece of jade in his hand. With a twist of his finger, the jade was divided into two parts. Then he placed it on the two prisoners, one on the left and one on the right, and explained to Yeliki. This jade is the Lian Xian jade. We only need to put the other half of this jade pendant on Yang Hong's body, and the other half on a prisoner's body. We only need to torture the prisoner to make Yang Hong feel the same way. Oh, there is also such an effect. When Yeliki heard this, he didn't expect that Dichu knew such crooked ways. It sounded like a good idea. I will try it on these two prisoners immediately. After Dijo hung the two jade pendants on the prisoners, he separated the two prisoners by more than 10 meters. Yeliki pulled out the dagger and was about to take action. At this time, he suddenly thought of something and handed the dagger to eunuch Chang. Hey, aren't you very skilled at craftsmanship? Just let me see. Eunuch Chang was startled, then smiled, and said, Your Highness, there is no need to use a knife to deal with a shameless villain like Yang Hong. I saw eunuch Chang walking up to the prisoner, looking up and down with a smile, then suddenly raised his hand and grabbed it, twisting it. Even Dijo on the side couldn't help but tighten his legs. The two prisoners were in so much pain that their eyes almost popped out. They fainted with a scream on the spot. Eunuch Chang took out the silk scarf and brought the two steaming treasures in his hand to Yeliki. He smiled and said, Is Your Highness satisfied with how we can defuse bombs with our bare hands? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 993. Above the nameless mountain, wisps of white rainbow surround it. Layers of strange auras are formed around the mountains. Where the aura shines, the surrounding snow melts, and a stream of pure yang energy spreads, nourishing the land in the 10 directions in front of it, causing its vegetation to bloom and fruits to be abundant. Such a mysterious scene, in the eyes of ordinary people, is tantamount to gods descending to earth and auspiciousness descending from heaven. It's a pity that this place is in the barren mountains and the mountains are blocked by heavy snow outside, so this magnificent scene has no chance for the world to see. Su Tong sat cross-legged in the cave, only to see a ray of pure yang light flickering between his eyebrows. His own soul continued to wither. Finally, all the power of his soul condensed into a crystal the size of a grain of rice, which was the pure yang thought. Although this object is small, it contains all of Su Tong's essence and soul. The quality of a ray of thought is far greater than the power of thousands of souls. When one thought arises, hundreds of conditions arise. When one thought dies, thousands of conditions end. Everything between birth and death lies in this single thought. The most important thing is that this is the threshold standard for becoming an immortal. Originally, it would take Su Tong at least several decades to reach this level. But with the help of the Nirvana Sutra and the Pure Yang distracting pill, Su Tong could reach this level as fast as a rocket. Then Su Tong's thoughts gradually began to split. From the original 1 grain, it became 3 grains, and then split again and became 9 grains. 9 thoughts were crystal clear and arranged in the shape of a pin in Su Tong's mind. This process is exactly what Taoists say: Tao gives birth to 1, which gives birth to 3, and the 3 gives birth to all things and then merges together. It's just that he made it in one leap with the help of pills. Although the attack was fierce, the stamina was not enough, and it was far from being like those who truly cultivated immortality. They could turn a thought into 10 million and crush the void to become an immortal. But even so, in this world, Su Tong is already a cheating existence. It's like you are wearing level 60 purple equipment. Although I am wearing green equipment, I am level 90 in the next version. Su Tong opened his eyes, but his pupils were introverted, and his whole person looked like an ordinary person. At this time, even if he is the best, he can't even think of seeing Su Tong's depth. Finally, Su Tong let out a long breath. At this moment, he finally had the qualifications to challenge the gods. Of course, it was limited to their thoughts. If their gods came, he should run or run. Then he tried to let out a thought. As soon as this thought flew out, it connected with Su Tong's mind. With Su Tong's thought, all Su Tong's lifelong learning was revealed in an instant. Pure Yang Sword Chi, Thunder Magic Talisman, and even the moment Su Tong used this thought to activate Yanshu and search for souls and bones, his thoughts turned into a big net, covering thousands of miles of surrounding mountains and rivers, and all the natural veins hidden in the mountains and rivers were captured. Then it turned into a talisman and returned to Su Tong's hands. The Mountain Shield Talisman is a small talisman that can add a layer of shield to items. It can't be said to be a top-notch talisman, but it is better than practical. Sure enough, it is a magical method, and the words and tricks are nothing more than that. After Su Tong realized the joy of being a god, he took back this thought. Although this thought was good, it had a huge backlash. That means it is extremely easy to be defeated. Su Lai didn't know, since he had never seen him actually take action. But Xiaolishan definitely has the strength to defeat his own thoughts with one sword. He can only split 9 of them now. Once all 9 thoughts are defeated, he will disappear and there will be no trace at all. Therefore, this method can only be regarded as one's trump card for the time being. It cannot be used casually unless it is absolutely necessary. If others notice it, it will be calculated intentionally or unintentionally. Then I might become like the second Yaoqing girl, being plotted against, having my thoughts taken away and turned into a stepping stone for others. Of course, this is only a possibility, and it is not easy to achieve. The reason why the idea of resurrecting the true king is unlucky is entirely because the embroidered shoes of the master's wife are too powerful. Otherwise, in the end, even if Shang Sheng Zhenjun does not call for his own godhead to come, he can still choose to self-destruct and die together with Su Tong. Then he stepped out of the cave and glanced at Sun Li beside him, only to see the big bird staring directly at him, his eyes full of confusion. Sun Li's strength is not much worse than De Yat. Before, I could see the extraordinary in Su Tong, but now, I can't even see a trace of it. Based on this alone, it can be concluded that, regardless of swordsmanship, Su Tong can already beat Xiaolishan in terms of cultivation at this moment. How long have I been in seclusion? Su Tong reached out and touched Sun Li's feathers and asked. Sun Li instinctively wanted to dodge, but Su Tong's hand still landed lightly on its head. For a moment, Sun Li could only lower his head, enjoying Su Tong's touch, and pointed at the stone wall beside him with his paw. I saw 7 more scratches on the stone wall, which should be the method Sun Li used to keep track of time every day. The time is just right, let's go to Yangzhou camp. Su Tong said, and jumped onto Sun Li. Sun Li spread his wings and quickly rose into the sky towards Yangzhou city. The Yangzhou camp was garrisoned with troops, but the troops were not gathered together. They were divided into camps. Many camps were several miles or even dozens of miles apart. On the one hand, it is to facilitate management, On the other hand, it is to prevent the situation of roaring camp. The Shinwoo camp where Sutong is located is not far from the main camp. 3,000 soldiers drilled day and night, and the sound of killings could be clearly heard by the sergeants in several surrounding camps. From the beginning of the station to now, the sound of drills has never stopped. Several generals stationed in the main camp were salivating every day as they listened to the sound. Why? Greeting. In the first month, these generals were still competing with each other and started practicing together early every day. But within half a month, they gave up. It's completely impossible. In the past, the garrison training only lasted 2 hours in the morning and evening every day, and the soldiers could still bear it. Ever since they started competing with the Shinwoo camp, the soldiers couldn't stand it, not only their bodies, but also their food. In the past, 3 meals a day of coarse food was enough, but according to the training methods of the Shinwoo camp, these generals had to spend their own money to buy some meat for these soldiers. But that little meat and fish was not enough. After half a month, not only the soldiers were exhausted, but the pockets of the generals were also a lot smaller. On the contrary, the people in Shinwoo camp became more and more energetic as they practiced. Several generals ran over and took a look. They were dumbfounded. The 3,000 warriors were all full of energy. They were shirtless in the winter, and the training ended until their whole bodies were boiling with heat. If you look closely, you will see that these warriors have already mastered the 5 tiger skills in the army and are about to perfect them. The spear in his hand was swung out, hanging motionless in the air. During the swing, there was a huge sound of breaking wind, like the roar of a tiger. At that time, these generals suspected that Commander Wu was partial and gave the best soldiers in the army to Marquis Shinwoo. But upon closer inspection, they became silent. Because they still have an impression of a few familiar faces among them. When they were removed, they were even soldiers they didn't like, and they were all skinny. But in the past half-month, he has grown more vigorously, and even his height has grown a lot. I just arrived at the hotel and took another look at the food. The faces of these generals were almost deformed. 5 large iron pots stood behind the military camp. Large pieces of mutton were cooked in the large iron pots until they were fragrant. Pieces of meat loaf the size of basins, 1 for each person. Served with mutton, a bowl of mutton soup, and thick meat cakes, these soldiers ate like wolves and tigers, and the food was delicious. Gu Zibai specially invited them to have dinner together. Don't tell me, it tastes really good, better than what they eat themselves. But after eating and drinking enough, when they left, everyone was in a very complicated mood. One of the generals squatted on the ground and cried loudly just a few steps out of the camp. While crying, he raised his eyebrows and said, "What is the comparison? This is all with money, his grandmas, you are amazing if you have money. If you had known, I wouldn't be a general, I would have come to Shinwoo camp to be a soldier after so many years of fighting, I can't even think about the days of stewing meat in iron pots every day, woo." The general's cries were full of grievances. The other generals saw him sitting and rolling in the snow, but no one laughed at him. Why? They don't dare to think about it. Not to mention stewed meat in an iron pot, even cooking cakes with meat, they didn't even dare to think about it. It's no wonder that these soldiers train vigorously every day. If it were them, they would do nothing every day and concentrate on practicing martial arts. They would eat when they were tired from training. They would have meat for every meal. They would also like to serve as soldiers in the Shinwoo camp. Moreover, these generals also discovered that the tremendous changes in these soldiers, not only in spirit, but also in terms of orders and prohibitions, were beyond their reach. The most typical thing is that when eating, there was neither whispering nor jostling. After each soldier lined up to get the meal, he sat neatly in his seat and immersed himself in eating. When they were eating with Gu Zibai, these soldiers didn't even say a word. This kind of military discipline may not even be comparable to the army that has fought hundreds of battles. Think about it carefully. If you encounter such an army on the battlefield, even if you are given 30,000 people, you may not be able to win. When they returned to their camp with such complicated emotions, looking at the soldiers in their camp, they all looked like frail girls, all of them very skinny. Looking at them again, they were standing there, all crooked and lazy, looking like they were having a meal and chatting about common things. In an instant, he became even more angry. It is said that that night, soldiers from several battalions were beaten to pieces by their own general for inexplicable reasons. The most unlucky soldier was just because his general saw him going to the toilet. He didn't know what the reason was, so he was beaten up because he didn't walk in the toilet. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 994. The thunder was very fast, and the barren mountain Su Tong broke through was actually not far from Yangzhou City, so in about half an hour, Su Tong had already crossed the huge Yangzhou City on the thunder. Looking down, although the spring festival has passed, the snow on the road has still not melted, and the city is still festive and peaceful. After all, in the hinterland of southern Yangzhou, a land of plenty, although the people cannot be said to be very wealthy, they are already much better off than in the north. Within a moment, the continuous large camp in the distance appeared in Su Tong's sight. Kill! 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 The sound of killing shook the sky. Su Tong was riding on Sun Li. Before he got close to his Xinwu camp, he was surprised by the strong murderous aura. Looking at the Kimen with the life eye, I saw that in the sky above the Xinwu camp, the blood was drained, and the murderous aura was like a rain of arrows and swords, scattered but not scattered, and the murderous aura was astonishing. Even monsters like Sun Li dare not approach easily, and charging in forcefully would even damage their abilities. Good soldier. Su Tong's eyes were filled with joy. Unexpectedly, Lao Bai gave him a big surprise just after returning to the camp. Although these warriors are mortal bodies, their murderous thoughts are terrifyingly pure. 3,000 people are twisted into one. Even I, a half-step god, find it a bit difficult. Without the blessing of the physical body, I can only think about it with my thoughts. If you destroy this army, you will probably suffer a heavy loss. After Su Tong signaled Sun Li to come down, Sun Li lowered his posture and cautiously approached the military camp. He refused to go inside until he landed in front of the military camp door. Gu Zibai, Ji Yizhou, and others were already guarding the gate of the camp. Just waiting for Su Tong to fall, he stopped the thunder, then stepped forward and bowed. The last general will pay homage to the general. Although he is a teammate and is usually a close brother of life and death, during these days in the military camp, Gu Zibai has completely integrated himself into it. He seems a bit rigid in his words and actions, but it is precisely this that allows him to make rapid progress. Su Tong squinted his eyes and looked up and down, only to realize that he was not the only one who made progress. It had only been more than 3 months, but Gu Zibai's progress was already so fast that even Su Tong was stunned. You must know that even before entering the world of the script, Lao Bai's strength was actually in the team, and he was only stronger than Li Bo. Whether it's Chang Wuji's space and assassination combination or Gao Zhou's zombie poison flow, Lao Bai actually doesn't take advantage of the two of them. If they were to compete, maybe Lao Bai could still fight to win or lose, but if it came to a real fight with life, Lao Bai would almost be dead. Let's not talk about Gao Zhou, the sixth person. Poison and zombies are pushed down in a wave. Even if Lao Bai is made of iron, he can't hold on. And Chang Wugu doesn't want to confront you head on. What this guy is actually best at is playing dirty tricks. Coupled with the 2 black water dragon fangs in his hand that have been strengthened to add 9, Lao Bai's best result is just, life is exchanged for injury. But now, the situation may be reversed. At this moment, the blood in Gu Zibai's body was like smoke, but it was drawn but not revealed. Su Tong looked with his spiritual eyes and saw 3 groups of bright lights on his back that were as bright as the sun, coming from Fengfu and Shinto. The 3 acupoints of Yang Guan and Yang Guan run through the entire spine. The spine was clear, the energy rushed to the 5 internal organs and limbs, and the whole body was as hot as a small sun. This is the state of becoming a saint through martial arts, which is more terrifying than becoming a Taoist. At least if he were to show off his enlightened state and duel with Gu Zibai in front of him, he would have almost no chance of winning without using the few prop cards in his hand. Not to mention Chang Wogu and Gao Zhou, even if they go together now, they may not be able to defeat him. Gu Zibai's progress was so rapid, it was natural that he could not do without Chang Wogu's help. The technique of relegation of immortals was really timely for Gu Zibai. His strength has stagnated, even with Yan Zioqi's guidance, he knows how to make further progress. But there is no way to advance. I rummaged around the exhibition for a long time, but I didn't find what I wanted. And this exalted immortal tempering is the advanced version of martial arts training techniques. Practitioners can open their own acupoints, and when they practice to a great extent, they can shatter the void and ascend to the physical body. This skill was obtained by Xiaolishan after he destroyed a martial arts sect in Suancan territory. It is indeed a martial arts magic that is rare in the world, but the threshold for this practice is too high, so that many disciples are not strong enough, their bodies are not strong enough to support the conditions of practice, and they become disabled after forced practice. That's why this martial arts sect declined. Seeing that this book was rare, Xiaolishan kept it and gave it to Yeliki as a gift. Even if you don't practice, keeping it to win people's hearts later is a good choice. However, Xiaolishan was afraid that he would never expect that a big rat would appear in his house, so this skill fell into Gu Zibai's hands. Su Tong stepped forward to help Lao Bai up and punched him in the chest. Okay, your progress in the past 3 months is really exaggerated. Facing Su Tong's praise, Gu Zibai felt a little embarrassed. He thanked Su Tong verbally, but in the team channel, he could not wait to challenge Su Tong. Head, how about finding a place to try? Okay, let's give it a try tonight. Su Tong agreed with a smile, just in time to let himself test his current strength and how much strength he could use to deal with a guy who has become a saint in martial arts. While the two were talking, they had already entered the Xinwu camp. It's quite embarrassing to say that after the camp was built, I didn't even stay for a few days before I hurried straight to Linen Mansion in Hangzhou. So much so that except for the few Ge Zhou who followed him at first, he didn't even recognize the soldiers here. But it doesn't matter if he doesn't recognize them, but it's enough for these soldiers to recognize Su Tong. Only when Su Tong came to the general stand, all the soldiers shouted to Su Tong the slogan that had been brewing in their hearts for a long time. God bless you, may your military fortunes be prosperous. God bless you, may your military fortunes be prosperous. God bless you, may your military fortunes be prosperous. The loud voice spread throughout the surrounding camps, causing other camps to shout out in unison. Even in the city of Yangzhou, people were startled by the sudden shouting. The sound of neat slogans pierced the sky, and Su Tong instantly realized that his luck was increasing crazily. This was not deliberately guided and arranged by Lao Bai, but the inner cry of every soldier. As early as half a month after Su Tong entered the palace, the story about the heads of the disciples of Marquis Xinwu spread. When the soldiers in the army learned that the first thing Xinwu Marquis did when he went to Linen Mansion was to behead the bastard Lu Yanfang, the hearts of these soldiers were deeply moved. Soldiers like them risked their lives when needed. They never dared to think that someone would offend the pillar of the dynasty for them. No one thought that Marquis Xinwu would hold up Lu Yanfang's head to greet Commander Wu and comfort the spirits of their fallen soldiers. Based on this alone, who among the officers and soldiers of the 3 armies dares to say that Marquis Xinwu is not good? Among these warriors who are lucky enough to become Xinwu camp, which one dares not to train hard? This cry is the result of Su Tong's expectations, and it is also the voice that every warrior wants to shout in his heart. Ouch! Under the bursts of shouting, Su Tong's head made a roaring sound that ordinary people could not hear. I saw Yinhu raising his head, his body suddenly increased to the extreme, and he let out a long roar, demonstrating the power of the tiger. Yinhu is circling the mountain, bringing good luck. Su Tong's luck and destiny are now complete. From now on, even if the other party has great luck, he will not lose to the other party in terms of luck. Thinking of this, Su Tong felt a sense of heroism in his heart. He glanced at the soldiers in front of him. The more he looked at them, the more he liked them. Under Gu Zibai's teaching and guidance, these warriors have become the real elite among the elite. With such a large army, there will be no place in the world. Thinking of this, Su Tong shouted, "Here comes the wine." After Su Tong said this, he motioned to Gu Zibai to go to the team warehouse and move out the large jars of Magia old wine. Gu Zibai nodded and walked to the camp. After a while, he came out carrying a wine jar and poured a large bowl of wine for each soldier. Su Tong picked up the wine glass in his hand. "Brothers, we dedicate this glass of wine to those brothers who died in battle." As Su Tong spoke, he spilled the drink at his feet. Then he picked up another glass of wine. "This glass of wine is for you." After Su Tong drank, all the soldiers raised their glasses to drink together. After the wine was drunk, Su Tong picked up the cup again. "Turn around and look north. This glass of wine is empty. I offer it to our future. When the day comes when we regain the north and bring peace to the world and peace for all eternity, we brothers will raise our glasses and drink together. The yellow sand will wear golden armor in 100 battles. Lilan will never be returned until it is broken." After Su Tong said pop, he dropped the wine cup in his hand to the ground. "The yellow sand wears golden armor in 100 battles, and Lilan will never be returned until it is broken." The 3,000 soldiers roared in unison and smashed cups together, which made several generals who had already arrived from the main camp become red-eyed. I swore in my heart that if I couldn't drive the northern barbarians out of the central plains in this life, I would never give up. The entire army continues to drill. Gu Zibai stepped forward and yelled, "Kill! Kill! Kill!" Suddenly, the whole playground was filled with the sound of killing. Even in the air, these soldiers had red eyes and waved the spears in their hands with all their strength.